Okay, let's be a little lazy tonight and let a good person, depending on who you are, Conor from Counterpoints 40K, or his more recent thing with Boo Brianna Woo. With that being said, let's get this started. Introduction to Chud Logic.
First, let's start with Chud Logic. If I get some of the lore incorrect, my apologies, but this is my understanding of Chud Logic's arc. Chud started as an earnest left-wing political figure and still stakes a healthy chunk of his reputation on honesty. In Chud's early days, he used an avatar as his online persona and made self-serious content. To hear people describe this arc of his channel, he would participate in online debates and left-wing theory streams, but these would only garner a few dozen viewers. Inferring from a few comments that he has made, he was very aware of the online political left-wing propensity for cannibalization and lived in a small but real fear that if he got out of line, he would be digitally torn to shreds by his peers. In a way, Chud Logic's fear became very real very early in his career. After a breakup, Chud began engaging with people on Discord in flirtatious banter. Some of this flirtatious banter moved to direct messages, including with a woman in her early 30s and a young lady. The young lady was 17 at the time, but lied about her age, but this didn't stop a public cancellation. After these flirtations fizzled out, the women took to social media to lambaste Chud as a groomer and the online political left.
A lot of people ask about this particular thing, and yeah, he summarizes it really well here. Yeah, just making sure this is being seen.
Leftosphere dogpiled him. This was during the peak of the Me Too fervor, where women were accusing men of sexual impropriety that previously had not been called out because it was socially normalized. Chud endured a public evisceration, but his crimes were largely being...
Yeah, Chud socially normalizing. That sounds like a joke.
Cringe, not being a pedophile. Several creators spoke up in his defense, and if I'm getting the lore correct, these included Xanderhall and Destiny. The defense was that grooming a woman in her 30s is laughable. From the direct messages, it appeared that the woman engaged in flirtation earnestly, reciprocated the attention, and didn't object to it. In reference to the 17-year-old, there is of course a sensitivity to older men taking advantage of their age and experience to sexually recruit young women, but this wasn't the case. It was mutual flirtation that the 17-year-old participated in, and when asked about her age, she lied. There's of course something to be said for not flirting with strangers online, and
all checks out, and Conor is technically on the right, although that's very questionable.
Enthusiastic consent and verifying the age of your potential romantic partners, but these are fairly boring routine lessons learned on.
Like enthusiastic consent, that is such a cuck position to hold, okay? I meant for your safety online, maybe it's good, but for everyday relationship, yeah,
that get nowhere near to sexual predation. After Chud endured this cancellation over a personal issue, it seems he got bolder with time. He got rid of his avatar, started taking stronger stances against left-wing dogma on social issues, and created his own niche. As time went on, he drifted out of politics and made the realization not only did he like talking about drama more, but it was more lucrative. The edgy jokes he made as a political commentator now became routine on his streams, and he cultivated an audience that loves blood sports, sexual degeneracy, and creator implosions. Since then, he has snowballed that into a successful drama commentary career, going live 5 days a week for 5 to 8 hours at a time, responding to the drama of the day. This has ballooned his channel from a few dozen live viewers to between 1,000 and 2,000 live viewers a day, depending on the spice and players involved.
With a little healthy dose of controversy out there, thanks to DK, his editor. A little bit of spice out there is definitely worth it. Trying to wade through all this bullshit, definitely something to keep in mind.
He has broken 45,000 subscribers on YouTube, with routine content breaking 10,000 views and large dramas being many times that number. He has a solid foundation on which to build a YouTube career, and barring any drug addictions, major sex scandals, or burnout, he's on an upward trajectory to be a star in the commentary community. With this success, though, has come a nihilistic view of content. Chud Logic was amongst an entire generation of political commentators who did not make it. Here are a series of examples. DJ Mule, a left-wing creator who tried to go full-time by orbiting Bad Buddy and making a drama video on Xanderhall, quit and went and got...
Okay, let's cut out with that in particular here. That's a little bit of the context for Chud Logic for anyone who doesn't know in his relationship with the left. But we're going to move on to the leaked Discord call that I definitely found quite interesting. And not to... bury the lead. In the second video I have sort of lined up, which I probably won't go much over. It's sort of obvious. It's President Sunday who leaked the Discord call.
Who here knows who the distributist is?
I wish I didn't. And take a look at Demon Mama Live.
Does anyone know this person?
For anyone who doesn't know the distributist, he's quite an odd figure. Definitely one of the dissident right people out there who's been sort of trucking along. So a lot of these figures aren't going to be very significant, and I don't know how they're going to play in overall to the sort of thing I'm looking into. But this is definitely very telling, especially if it's replicated among other distant right people or what people are calling the woke right nowadays.
Name rings a bell. So what I'll do, I don't know much about them. I've seen their channel around, okay? And I think I would normally cover to be... Do you get me? In any case, they sound like bad superheroes, that's true. So look, this is something that I think is kind of linked to what we're going to be watching. So look, I think we can all agree that, like,
old Chud with the streaming, he's definitely much better in practice, better than me, definitely currently, probably even back then he's better than
I'm
his.
going to focus, obviously, because the kind of people that this person is concerning themselves with and what we're going to listen to are like Western leftists. Okay, so they're people like me, they're people like you, probably people that have
No, not like me. But go on.
kind of suffered under like the weight of electoral defeat over the past year, or the past 6 or 7 months. So in the UK, we obviously had one of the most crushing Labour Party losing. You've
old Chud.
Yeah, should we?
Being
And
a
they
little
of course want to
cockier.
turn that discontent pool of someone trying to like tap into that. Yeah, but where did the idea
Yep,
for this come
definitely.
from? Where did this video
This
come
was
from?
4
And I think
years ago,
that the
just
call
a-
that we're about to play has all the answers. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's get into the thing. So basically, from what I understand, this voice call is from a server that is populated by the so-called Dissident Right. So these are people that don't like directly align. The way it was described to me is they hate like Conservative Inc., right? Like the GOP. They also hate like the Democratic establishment. They hate like the neoliberal establishment. Okay. And they center their politics in many ways around like religion.
They hate everyone who's not around, and the religion thing's a little bit.
And they feel that their politics should be centered around religion. Now, as I say, I'm getting someone on in a bit.
I don't think framing it around religion is quite right. More like Carl Benjamin with the sort of postmodern traditionalist would be the broadest possible way to sort of lay it out there.
That they're talking about using in order to benefit from the dissatisfaction that we're currently seeing amongst, broadly speaking, like the online left. Okay, so if I just let me load this bad boy up, and we'll go from there. Okay, just got to wait a sec for it to load. Here's his bullshit.
Impatient Chud.
Yeah, didn't me? That's right. This
political.
That's kind of always I'm struggling with.
If populism on the right is still a relevant political bloc, we
can't hear me. You should be able to hear me.
Yeah,
you should be able to hear me.
Checking the volume.
Political sphere.
He needs to base boost
in ways I think.
I guess that wasn't around back then.
If we become demographically sealed off.
No, we are. Yes, Trump was the last chance to stop that, and he has officially failed. So you are.
Trump will protect us.
The question is, what are you going to do with that reality, right? And the thing is that I don't see us stopping that demographic trend.
No, we're not.
Okay, so we're going to essentially have to open up. Like I said, we're going to have to open up another front on this war, right?
So, could you tell us what the fronts already open? What are the current fronts of the war, so we can sort of figure out what
that would be? I'm just speaking off the country, guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, a front is like the progressives have to worry about this element of the government.
That's as loud as it will go. I can't turn it up anymore. It's
like a progressive in my town, right? Like, which is a highly progressive town, right? He can get up, he can interact with every single institution he interacts with, and he'll be sure that every single person's institutions are progressive, right? Until he turns on the TV and watches Trump give a speech. So right now, he only sees one, right? That person.
Sure, these are
another front would be
progressives in his town.
The meme war was another front. right?
I wonder
So
if
what
this
the
guy
meme war was,
gets
like,
out, or
you open up
just is
Facebook, or
constantly
you open up
talking
Twitter,
online.
and you get interactions with a bunch of people who are retweeting the Dissident Right memes, right? That's another way that you can open up a front. Like any institutional interaction that people would ordinarily interact with would open up a front in the culture war, right? So like, I mean, I'm trying to think.
God, Dave. I mean, honestly, I feel like online is the last stand on the cultural war, and censorship's doing a great job at winning.
That's the only place your ideas actually fucking work generally, online or in an echo chamber.
There's definitely, obviously, I think Alex Jones comes up in a bit as well. There's definitely like a recognition there that like is having an impact. These platforms, the deplatforming that's happening of people like Alex Jones, is this supposed to be a high level discussion? It gets some interesting points. We'll continue anyway. But yeah,
interesting. Sure.
Cathedral is weak.
The
great irony
cathedral.
about this.
Quite an interesting idea.
Its grasp on international politics is weakening. That's why.
And sorry, so the cathedral, just to be clear, in this instance, what they've created this concept of this cathedral, and it's like that's like the establishment. That's like the sort of neoliberal kind of establishment, I guess is the best way to put it. And the whole point of this is, and you'll see, but it's about uniting with, like, it's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's that sort of concept, I think.
Why you can see
Yeah,
it.
that's correct.
If it was powerful,
elite theory you'll find, like in Shoe on Head's hubby's video, and other people talk about elite theory. They are the enemy. And I agree, a lot of them are the enemy. But there's going to be a video that brings up a distinction way later down the line.
Progressives and far left dissidents.
Well, but
they smell blood in the water, but we're kind of already the crippled fish on the other side of the pond.
Yeah, damn right, you crippled fish.
I guess it doesn't, like the cathedral weakening, I don't see has opened up much opportunity for us. I'm still trying to see what other fronts we could look at as a place to focus our attention on. I don't know what's already not been completely won by progressives. That somehow has been ignored in some way that we find it and we try to push into that area.
I mean, I don't know. Like, this does feel like very focused on like culture war stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like there's been like an absolutely
that's a very weird thing to really bring up. This was the LARPiest thing. What the fuck? Epic dorky. Epic dork. A light man's gonna take over soon. It sort of has. These losers aren't the sort of front runners. Highly interesting. I like how they think BreadTube, some hyper influential political movement. Distributors said, I quote, dude, almost nothing can be proven. Yes, take advantage of that.
Enormous uprising. There's been like an absolutely enormous uprising in like populist right movements, you know. But the thing to bear in mind as well is the framing of this. So obviously they don't consider themselves
populist right movements. Populism, left, right, even libertarian populism, which seems completely retarded to me, but
part of like Conservative Inc. They call themselves the Dissident Right. So they are they are opposed to, as well as like the Democratic establishment, they're also opposed to like Conservative Inc. So like the GOP, basically, yeah? Does that make sense? You see what I mean? I'm just trying to contextualize this as best as I can. And like I say, I'm going to get some people on a link to this to discuss it further, so we'll get some more insights too. But let's continue. I want to play it in its full context. So.
Yeah, because this is how I see the culture we're playing out, right? Like the GOP is dead in the water, right? Like that's obvious right now. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's going to have to be a realignment at some stage because it's obvious. Because this is sort of, I know Charlemagne's right. It's always good to have more time, right? But like at some point, people are going to realize that Joe Biden represents the absolute establishment, which is that's obvious for me. It's obvious.
Joe Biden is a scarecrow. There should be a fucking age limit on the presidency. Okay, at a certain point, they're just a dead man walking in general. Okay, just like a puppet. Trump is probably propped up by his ego and a lot of other things.
The leftist dissidents are actually our allies, right?
I guess, Anarcha Boy, what they're saying is the GOP is dead in the water in terms of the GOP is dead in the water for the interests of the dissident right. I believe is what they're trying to say. You know.
Good faith reading, good.
But yeah, I think that they feel that it's not like they're under the impression maybe that it's not running it to their interests, perhaps, you know.
Yeah, going through this old content for Chud Logic, he's always been he's been less fair of recent days, but I still think he's fair. He plays into it a little bit more nowadays.
But yeah, the other thing to bear in mind is that these people.
Yes,
they come across as like terminally online. You'll see in a minute they start speaking about breadtube and stuff as well. You know,
this was a plan by the distributors and other people. I don't know how well it's going to translate to other things, but you know what? Research stream on how this goes.
Did the video freeze? No, I don't think so.
Because they will bear down on the cathedral when they realize that they're being held out by the establishment.
Yes,
and sorry, just to be clear as well. So like for example, I don't know what their specific opinion is on like on Israel. You know, I don't know these people. We can maybe find out. But like, Trump has been in many ways quite disappointing to the dissident right and the alt right because you know he hasn't really delivered on the promise of this wall. Okay.
Yeah.
He also has been incredibly supportive of Israel, which obviously they're not happy with.
Yep.
And in fact, I think that like the fact that Trump hasn't met the standards of many of like alt-right figureheads is reflected in this kind of like this.
Yeah, a lot of the freaking alt-righters. I think someone defended fucking Richard Spencer of his sort of I don't know if it was a sort of burn the world down with him endorsing Joe Biden or shit like that. Fuentes fucking distanced himself from that whole movement. Mainly because he's a salty cat boy, but that's besides
dissident right kind of Groyper versus conservative ink stuff we've seen, like the Fuentes simps going to Charlie Kirk events and causing trouble. You see what I mean? So yeah, I mean, we can ask the guests that come on about their perspective on that, but my guess would be that yeah, they're unhappy with the fact that Trump hasn't met up to what they were hoping for from Trump, I guess. That would be my assumption, you know.
Be open up front that doesn't fall into some of the categories Closet supposed to. So how can we weaponize the progressives or form an alliance with the progressives that's actually going to turn them against the good?
Here's the important part. Yeah, maybe they're LARPing, but as I'll get into, I think where they're failing, other people are sort of seceding here and there.
You got maybe someone like Biden is effective.
Thank you so much for asking that question. That question has been consuming. That's the question I was going to make a video on this.
So you can see already some of this conniving and some of the manipulating starting to come in here. You know, how can we weaponize the progressives? Oh, actually, and what I mean is, how can we work with the progressives? Do you see what I mean? There's lots more of that to come. So
the whole troubles that I needed light here. I needed light affair, and I published a bomb video of our paper disease. but that question has been consuming my mind, right?
Which question was that exactly?
How best to use the far left to further the goals of dismantling the cathedral?
It might be the case that globalization. It might be the case, as nasty as it sounds, that we need to figure out how to come to some sort of reconciliation with RedTube. What's that?
How to come with some sort of reconciliation with RedTube. So, yeah, I'll let it play out a bit more because there's a bit more to this.
Yeah.
Okay. People are kind of dumb, right? Like they're like
don't
online.
Assume they're
like
dumb.
RedTube isn't really taking that seriously anymore. I don't think, you know. Like, yeah. Anyway, it gets a bit more.
It is sort of don't attribute malice to when it could be incompetence or stupidity. It can be the other way around.
You see in a sec, so I want to let it play out.
Yes, and that sounds gross, and it doesn't have to be vouched, right? It could be someone else, but that might be
maybe. I feel like the only path available on that is a unified front against some sort of globalist capitalist momentum that we want to push back on. But anything other than that is going to really not.
Yeah, they hate the elites as much as the left. They hate capitalism. The difference between the dissident right and something like the dissident left, which could be called an offshoot of populism. I don't want to conflate them too much because there's legitimate populists who have good ideas out there. you want popular ideas. It's just when you're going about propagating these popular ideas, either left, right, or something like libertarianism, yeah, you need to be honest. And they tend not to be, from what I've seen.
Be in our favor. So
as it sort of highlights.
It's a lot simpler than you're making it, right? It's a lot simpler than you're making it. They don't, because you're not taking into account the stupidity and avariciousness of the cathedral itself, right? Like, they don't have to actually be in alliance with us. We don't have to,
the big bad, the elites, they're just as malicious and stupicious as anyone else within this whole bullshit thing.
Optics. And who crosses over. And all they have to do is
your optics suck.
Reduce what their means and platform them.
But you're just running
and stop attacking us
for this woke rights
and
stuff
stop attacking us, because BreadTube is actively complicit right now in helping the cathedral fight the dissident right, which is the opposite of what they should be doing.
Sure, it is that effort for credibility, right? So but
thanks for the right.
So but the thing is that what we need to do is two fronts. First of all, if BreadTube comes in and cooperates with global capital, humility for it.
BreadTube.
This is important.
Okay, right.
I don't even think they were relevant back then.
Weren't
They already fallen
if she doesn't
down?
condemn, or someone like The Economist, if she doesn't condemn The Economist, then harass her for it, or not harass her.
Harass her.
Did you hear that? Harass ContraPoints.
Yeah, not much different than fucking what Vosh did.
So the point they're making is, like, if ContraPoints so-called, links up.
When did that happen? Okay, I'm gonna let it play. I'm curious about the Vosh sort of fucking with ContraPoints and that turning into a whole big thing.
And does like an article in like a mainstream press. The concept is that they call that out, but they use the word harass, and then the person corrected themselves, and this person said, no, you're right, harass.
It's still not great.
So look, the point I want to make on that specific thing is that when, like,
so what you're saying,
when like the right, when people like this are critical of the left, or like try and call out hypocrisy or something like that, it's not an organic thing that they're doing. Do you see what I mean? They're not like organically coming out in criticism of some lefty figure for any other reason than it being like a considered strategic move to try and discredit them. Did you see what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, and I had my mic muted for that whole thing. I'm a dumbass and gonna have to edit this later down. Probably smart in anyways. So what happens when I use the wrong thing? Fuck. So what I was saying, why I was muted, is the Vosh counterpoints. A bridge is burnt. Drama recap, because he's got to recontextualize into drama and not anything serious, can be found on his channel, Vosh channel. Be a little dirty to go there. March 17th, 2022. But it is a good way to get things up and going.
They hate the corporations.
You're not supposed to direct them. They're bigger than you. You can't direct them. You're just trying to be a wedge. You're trying to be... What?
Forgive me for being a bit skeptical.
Yeah.
So just to be clear as well, they're talking about the wedge. So that's them trying to utilize. Yeah, exactly right, Anarcha Boy. You've got to examine what their motives are. You can't just take what they say at face value. And what they're essentially admitting to there is they're going to harass, say, Contra if she appears in some mainstream news article, as a way of driving a wedge, presumably between the people that are like disaffected,
And how would have that even worked? They don't think their ideas out. like the white nationalists. Let's just get them all out, pay people to move back to Africa. It just doesn't work in the long run.
Disaffected with some of the stuff that's happened recently. And yeah, I mean, this as well kind of demonstrates, and I'm not talking about ContraPoints specifically per se. I'm not saying you have to like ContraPoints, support ContraPoints or whatever, but it really goes to show how all this like infighting and all this other stuff that we do is just so pointless. And not only do the right put fuel on the fire, and they want, and that's why I feel like sometimes we've got to just take a look at our behavior and just be like, what
blah blah blah,
make moves to make that worse, right?
Leftist because they historically, all people they call Nazis or whatever, they've always done this. So what principally going against
destroying the fascism optically.
Dunking on
it looks like Alex Jones can be platformed on every institution.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's Jones is a clown. I think that's what if
you're exactly 100% right. This is why this and look, I'm not saying don't be critical or be frustrated if they make a wrong move or whatever. But this, do you think that right-wing content creators have to put up with the same kind of pressures from the people on their side as people on the left do? Do you think that Sargon of Akkad's got people on his side questioning his Patreon and questioning how he spends his money and questioning his finances?
Yeah, sometimes, but not as much, probably, at least within that era that they are in. Doesn't happen as much, but you do have dipshits like this, supposedly on the right, supposedly in other places, just dissident, that will do this shit. Ethan Ralph doxing or doing crap to Nick Fuentes. Yeah, it's a little bit different, but it still happens to a certain extent.
I don't know. It's just when you hear them, the kind of conniving and the plotting that they're doing, and all I see is how our like activities and our behavior sometimes, like in the online space, just doesn't help anything. Do you know what I mean? Wrong. We're talking about the culture war. We're talking about BreadTube, talking about Contra. This is all super.
The thing is, I think that people that buy into they might scare off.
True.
If moderate people, but I think that I don't think you can find any out.
The way to translate it to a real political power is something definitely worth considering. The online feminists at one point only had power there, but eventually it started creeping its way into the real world. That's my thoughts on that.
Now, thinking about them like you're an axe, you have to think about them like institutions that you can cut apart. Sure. If you bash trash by bashing the Covington kids, I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy that on BreadTube. I think there'll be a lot of people on BreadTube and then left who kind of will feel a bit dirty about that. We'll kind of be.
Yeah, I'm going to get to a certain point before I skip this particular bit, but a lot of this is a little bit too long, and we're only halfway through.
The moderates are the cathedral. They're the status quo. You want to get the radicals who.
How are the moderates the cathedral? This is why they don't use elite theory. The cathedral is just anyone who represents the status quo. Does that sound like certain people on the left? Similar ideas flipped on its head, which will become relevant later.
Who are actually somewhat principled to say, "Hey, we're shitting on our own."
And sorry, I just want to remind everyone as well. I just want to remind everyone of that video that we saw earlier that the distributist who's speaking the most on this call retweeted, right? So look,
yes, a leftist
dissident left versus McWorld. This is playing into exactly the kinds of stuff that they're talking about on this call, right?
Exactly.
So it's no coincidence of the cathedral. Watch the video. I only found out verbatim. Thing. We're going to
stop being.
I understand that, but what the varying to me, and that's a focus on.
Come on, I should have did a little bit more.
Bernie losing was the best way for that to happen in terms of diverting attention from us, because there was no.
I mean, how true is that? How many conversations have you seen on Twitter about Bernie or bust and Biden and all this stuff? Taking attention away from what these.
The whole Bernie angle is definitely going to come up later in this particular stream. So looking at the past, looking at how Chud handled this, I think he goes on a little bit too much, but I can see what he's trying to do, especially with probably the audience he had at that time.
These dipshits are doing. Right? Bernie losing represents a great opportunity for them to, have the attention distracted away from them. But also, as we're seeing with this content now that's coming out, to reach out and reach across the aisle, and attract the people that are most disaffected by it. And that's why, I've spoken about this.
But are they doing it for their own ends or because they really care about reaching across the aisle? This is why good faith can be weaponized in certain ways.
Before, that's why I think that this sort of blasting this Trump propaganda is like, oh my God, look at what a meme Trump is. He's just wrecked Joe Biden, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think
there's no level of excuse making that they can blame the right for this.
Also, so this is the perfect time to reach out to people.
Yep.
The perfect time.
Okay, this is very good.
Go out and offer condolence.
Money. I doubt they're seen at this level. They're probably using this as sort of a incentive to get people on board.
Offer, speculate on how we can work together to reimagine society. Talk about learning to live and let live with them. That's what they want to hear right now, right? And like after you come onto their streams and say that, like the boomers dancing around on the grave of the Bernie Sanders campaign are going to look a lot less bad.
Should I go out and contact my local DSA chapter? I'm actually on surprisingly good terms with them, even though
oh my God,
little fights over the years.
I know that's a joke, but that's not actually.
No, I don't think he's joking.
So now that's interesting. So we're moving from a largely online culture war type conversation to one of these people now talking about contacting their local DSA chapter, and that for me gives it a kind of bit more of a frightening edge, right? The idea that one of these people,
frightening, and more should be like these people are socially inept. What are they going to do?
One of the dissident right are going to start. It's like this is,
and some of the Chad and Chud centrists aren't that bad. They just want things to be better. They just are misinformed. How everyone has the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm an idiot. I keep things simple for myself and other things, so I'm not going to go too deep into President Sunday when I get into that. A lot of that is about deep thinking and what people read. Not that any of these other guys don't get off that crap either.
No, I'm not going to make that comparison. I'm going to try and keep it serious. Are gonna start to turn this online thing into an in real life action and in real life organizing. And get in touch with their DSA chaps.
Yes, no shit, Sherlock.
I'm not actually joking.
Online popularity.
I'm not joking either. I think there's some opportunity there.
Rebuild the bridge puzzle.
They probably don't joke as much with each other. That's probably their defense.
The way progress is so sensitive to people like you, Dave, and people like everyone in this room. And when you start saying stuff like that to them,
Their big progressive agenda is clearly the cathedral and not us. And we're gonna win that argument because there's no.
They're gonna win that argument, people. Gotta love this sort of.
It's just too direct into their face.
Yeah, you see that as well. It's not the dissident right that's the problem. It's the cathedral. It's the establishment.
Yep. And they got their fair share.
Interesting. Very interesting.
I definitely think that I can work. And I've seen many people in the dissident right that come from that milieu. I would argue someone like Keith Woods is probably the perfect example. You're getting a lot of Keith Woods,
explicitly National Socialist, and hanging out with Richard Spencer.
And posting jokes.
I understand.
Keith Woods is someone who instinctively has leftist instincts. That's what I'm trying to say.
So you might know which is. No, I agree. I totally agree. He has someone like Keith Woods, but with
good optics.
Yeah, I can understand what
good optics.
You might get some of extra how effective.
To my mind, culturally, is where you put somebody in the course of someone else's life, in a position of authority. Then the dissident writer is, hey, someone yelling Jews will not replace us in Charlottesville. Now all of the dissident writer is, hey, it's that nice kid from the coffee shop. Hey, it's so and so who's my union organizer.
that, you know, this is like typical fucking infiltration, good optics, crypto stuff. Like, yeah, this is pretty wild. And the thing, you know, they're talking about, that person who is a dissident writer is my union organizer. Like, this is the level that they're thinking of potentially getting to, and how successful they'll be.
Yeah, laundering the ideas through more optically respectable people, just working your way up through the food chain of social media, and probably using some dirty tactics to knock some other people and make other people scared to speak up.
I mean, I don't know. You know, is this just a or is this something that they're actually going to follow?
Probably like 10 lot of people that are in terms of the people here.
But it should have attempted.
Not exactly.
I mean, reaching a compromise and the attempt itself, just not on a more public platform, who can finish the conversation with a lot of progressive listening, thinking, wow, we agree on a lot more than I thought we would, or man, he's not as bad as I thought they are. And we don't need to, like, we can play into the radicalization of the left, and that's in our favor.
I mean, this is.
Yeah, a lot of this is just for context, just for research. Who knows how many of these ideas are sort of brought forward? Yeah, you almost died there.
More in front of them that are not on the right, and it is the establishment, and they are aware of this in a way that is fairly unique in terms of our strategic options. Like, we're not. It's not a 1-for-1 comparison. We shouldn't look at it as that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, this is all like manipulation strategies, and you know. Basically planning how to convince people, not with like good rhetoric or good ideas, but how to be like as manipulative as possible. No, we're listening to a leaked Discord voice call, which is a bunch of dissident writers talking about strategies to grow their movement and get this effect.
Yep, getting in alignment with the dissident left, or another term for that, populist left, right. And nowadays, the left-right thing. All of Miss Sparkles doing a boring stream where a lot of research. So I'm trying to put it in
lefties round to their way of thinking.
Be quite clear. I mean, Justin Murphy would be a person that I'm trying to build alliances with right now.
Yes.
It's about going places, right? Like, Justin Murphy can go places that a lot of people on the right can't go.
Yes,
because he's an academic.
He's an academic.
A principled one at that. But is he even really?
Get the academics on your side. That's how you get the respect of the right. Oh God, the sort of tactics that these guys do. Not as bad as James Lindsay. I'll probably get into that.
Left wing anymore. I figured having like Moldbug on would get him excised from most of the mainstream left.
The plausible deniability of being a right winger is what matters.
There, plausible deniability. You know, everyone calls us racist, Nazis, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sometimes that's bullshit. Other times, you can get away with some serious things out there. And you use, of course, they're calling me a Nazi. They've been doing that for 10, 20 years.
You know, I'm not a big fan. I mean, truth be told, I'm not a big fan of Justin Murphy.
Probably not what they have in mind, but he has legitimate merit on social media.
Yeah, okay, and you know, there's that too. But look, the thing is that he opens up, like, we're trying to open up a front. We can't get on college campuses right now. We can't get into progressive communities right now. We need that front. Because
so yeah, that's interesting as well. And it's like they're aware that, like, because they've been pushed back on college campuses, some of their thought leaders are getting deplatformed from the bigger platforms. They now have got to think of more devious ways to slip in, right? So this conversation is necessitated because the strategies and tactics that have been engaged in have actually been somewhat successful, right?
When it comes to the cathedral moving, things in the cathedral move forward until they hit some person in power who has a reservation. And right now, the entire cathedral operates out of Blue America. It operates basically without the input of any Trump supporter, or most any Trump supporters.
Closden, you did a skeptical there regarding the colleges. What do you think about that? I may or may not have.
A lot of these dissident right people don't like Trump, just for anyone watching, okay? They will use Trump. They will use whoever they can to achieve their ends. They'll use leftists, they'll use libertarians, they'll use political figures who should be on their side.
I've put up a couple "It's Okay to Be White" posters a couple of years back.
Oh my god, cringe.
With the cover of Night. I'm interested. That's good. But I mean, I'm interested in.
Shut up, Chud. It's okay to be white, guys. Okay. It's okay to be any color under the sun.
Dave, like, he's a great example of someone who's opening up to the conversation.
Hey, Zanzi, thank you very much for the raid. Just to make it clear to everyone so you don't think I'm a fucking crypto fascist, we're currently listening to a leaked Discord call, which is from someone called the Distributist, who's speaking the majority of the time on this call, just discussing tactics and strategies for attracting like disaffected leftists to their cause. So we're nearly finished, and then we're going to get some guests on. Oh, for fuck's sake, I just closed it. And then we're going to get some guests on who are going to...
some person in power who has a reservation. I hate his cringe conversations with like on internet thoughts and talks to them. I think they're like ideas.
What kind of book names?
Zanzi, is the Distributor someone that's reached out to you before to make content together? Can you just... Is that correct?
Base the wounds. Yeah. Okay, and there's that too. But look, the thing is,
this is the part I'm going to stop at.
We can't get on college campuses right now.
I mean, they sort of reiterate
get into progressive communities right now. We need
that they're going to leftists. They want the bread tube to take out the cathedral, which could be the elites. It could be just moderate people out there.
This operates out of Blue America. It operates basically without any Trump support or most any Trump supporters.
Closington, you did a skeptical there regarding the colleges. You may or may not have.
Sorry, we're listening to it already.
A couple "It's Okay to Be White" posters.
You get to hear that cringe again.
Back.
Cringe.
With the cover of Night. I'm interested. That's good. But I mean, I'm interested in just actually advancing forward.
Right. How do we find more Justin Murphys? He's a great example of someone who's opening up to the conversation, realizes that a lot of the grievances are much.
Has he expressed an interest in speaking to me?
Originally expressed.
Here's the part I wanted to finish.
That's a short.
Okay, Zanzi. So has he expressed an interest in speaking to me, which I'm open to since he's openly reactionary. He's in opposition to the modern conservative movement. I'd hardly consider it a collab. I've reached out to Friday Speaks about hosting moderating a conference if it happened. I would strongly recommend not doing that personally. But yeah, the reason being is he is specifically trying to be like the good optics right winger who's trying to collaborate with lefties basically.
And he's still doing this. He's still doing this good boy act, despite how he's obviously operating behind the scenes. And that's enough for that particular little thing. Yep. It's one of Chud's older videos. So let's take a look. Now let's get into the look of him with President Sunday. Might be one of the first time President Sunday appeared. I don't know. I've known about President Sunday for a while, since the sort of Sargon stream. So let's go to the leaked Discord call. Want to get into the place. It's a little bit ahead. Okay.
These guys are right. Mostly. That's why I'm getting so much out of what they write. And
sort of give a bit more insight into your role within all this, or would I rather keep that on the down low?
No, I think President Sunday could describe, because I think they've already kind of like pointed in his general direction. So yeah, go ahead.
I suppose I could give some sort of history.
Yeah, you go to early President Sunday content, and he's all over the board there. Okay, he's all up on that stuff. Him and before the sort of President Sunday started to get into Vosh criticism. And I think I argued with President Sunday on like his part one of Vosh that Vosh was a left-wing reactionary. Somewhere within his original videos like 4 years ago, maybe even longer than that.
For this and sort of how I got sort of aware of this kind of thing. So I come from sort of a Christian background. I wasn't really very politically involved at all, except for, sort of the dumb. I went just to criticize people who I saw in certain circles who were just, because as a political scientist, I was seeing them saying things that were just very wrong.
He was even cockier back then.
Wrong about social theory, political theory, whatnot. and pushing those for political reasons was bothering me. So the first thing I did a video on was...
I mean, not necessarily wrong there. I don't know. Political theory, getting into the weeds. I do research on that stuff, but spouting that stuff and sort of debunking these sort of old ideas, who fucking cares? How does it apply to us? President Sunday is a weird one. It's sort of funny. I think he's trying to keep open his commentary lanes. I saw him in a Soul Skibbity chat just a few days ago. Soul Skibbity, just for anyone tuning in, I don't think he's streaming anymore. I don't know. All the commentary, small commentary shitters who are coming to the scene seem to be dropping like flies. But Chud is here to stay, and why I like him, don't always agree with him. But still,
Rationality Rules video
Sunday
on
is one person that occasionally I think he has a good take, but that's when he's actually doing good. Queeman fucking base. No, he's never base. Sometimes he's just right about certain things. That doesn't happen too often, in my personal opinion.
Western civilization doesn't know anything to Christianity or something along those lines. And I wasn't pushing a religious move. I was just saying, like, look, historically, this plays a role. Here's why. And I remember the distributist from my old teenage years of watching Sargon and whatnot. Unfortunately, that is where I come from originally. And I sent him the link, and he shared it. And so I started sort of getting a bit involved there, and it seemed pretty tame to start with. Eventually, I criticized the academic agent. He had...
Yeah, there's a sort of weird thing with President Sunday that I didn't know about. No more righty. He was in the sort of Dissident Right server. Who knows?
A video against the Civil Rights Act, and I made a video on why segregation is bad. And this was my first taste of what's going on here, because the distributist insisted on a Skype call the night I posted that video and proceeded to yell at me for 30 some odd minutes about how I was sowing dissent in the right. I vaguely remember something. We argued about the validity of Jared Taylor for a little bit. It was weird.
Oh my God, that's so cringe.
Yeah, I believe this. With everything I've learned about these guys, Jared Taylor, yeah, not great.
Slapping his desk, and yeah. And there were red flags, no kidding. But long story short, I gave up trying to appease that crowd entirely, and I just kept on with the academic agent stuff. Eventually, I tried to make peace with the guy, long story short. So I had made peace with the academic agent, just because I had criticized him to the extent that I wanted to. I didn't want there to be like this ongoing war.
Because you really can't do the long run, President Sunday. Sorry, you got your moments. You're getting smarter with the game, but still not really great overall. Going through research, I don't think he's going to be able to hack in real commentary. The sort of Destiny Orbiter Spear is where weird stuff is coming in with commentary. J-Stalk streams. That just stuff has me a little sus.
Or I didn't want to define my channel. I wanted to do political theory. So I made up with him, and then I tried to make up with David Distributist. And we had a Telegram chat, an audio one, and it went amicably. He tried to discuss the cathedral.
Yeah. The distributive Dave seems to be one of these sort of people more running cover. Benjamin Boyd's channel is full of him coming in the bat for the sort of conversation around the woke right. Benjamin Boyd, like the guy and all, okay, but there is sometimes where people can use open free speech to the degree he goes with, to a absurd degree, to derail things.
Explain it to me. I didn't buy into it at all, because it's a bubkiss idea that lowers the resolution of political discussion to the level of inanity. But I was letting him talk about it, and he was mentioning, like, okay, so the cathedral imposes upon a certain narratives that are going to have a destructive impact in the long term on our society. And I've got two examples that come to mind. I've got a non-PC one and a PC one. Which one do you want? And of course, I asked, well, let's hear the non-PC one. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, of course.
And he was saying stuff, and then he goes on like, well, it's pretty much settled that there's like there's serious IQ disparities between blacks and whites. Yeah, and I was like, okay, well, slow down a second.
The bell curve.
Okay, let's assume just, and I was this conciliatory. I didn't have to be, but I was this conciliatory, and I said, look, let's assume that these
Maybe he's actually going to say something decent.
Tests are perfectly valid. That the way they were done was perfect. The results are not skewed in any way in describing the current situation vis-a-vis that particular, whatever that aspires to measure.
Oh, God.
It doesn't account for environmental or historical factors. In other words, all these little creeping things that would affect.
No, it doesn't take into account different learning methods and different ways. The educational system in America and most of the world is fucked. They have one sort of methodology. Let me not derail too much. IQ test can test for certain merits, but they won't tell you much. Do you really think all these musicians and athletes have exactly a high IQ? Not necessarily. Not going to discount that some of them, but let's say Kanye and a lot. P. Diddy. I heard from a Chappelle speech he had wild sex parties that could have been gay. Don't know. That was a decent speech.
The performance of a person after 20 years of childhood, of childhood, was so
blah blah.
You were maybe on friendly terms. Maybe didn't see the depths of how pernicious the views were, maybe, and that was maybe like a mask-off moment. Is that kind of what happened? Do you think?
Yeah. So I mean, maybe I was naive. I had known sort of about the race stuff a bit earlier on.
Okay.
No shit there, man. Shit. I underestimate the race shit, but man.
But I had this naive idea. Okay, look, here's what I can do. I know the history of this stuff. I know why it doesn't make sense. I can put it in fairly clear language. I'm going to try to present this stuff in such a way that people who watch my stuff... And
this is why the academia scene is fucking lost cause. It's like theoretical physics, the Sheldons of the universe compared to actual practical mathematicians out there trying to solve problems with real science. Not that theoretical physics. I love the idea of quantum mechanics and the fact that we're getting quantum computing, which seems to be a game changer, unless the entire scientific community is fucking pulling everyone's leg with this bullshit. Okay, let me not get into that. I'm gonna go into some weird stuff. If I continue with that line,
you can sort of figure out along with me. Maybe this way of viewing it doesn't make sense, or maybe we should at least question it. And I naively thought that they were sincere in how they came to their conclusions because I thought that would work, or at least it could work in theory. And what I've come to realize just watching this after the fact is they're
a lot of things could work in. Okay, sorry.
About
this is the misdiagnosis,
and I naively thought that they were sincere in how they.
I think this is a misdiagnosis that everyone's applying to it. It's not a Christian. It utilizes Christianity, but it's more about like Sargon, sort of postmodern traditionalists. That's more the idea that we'll see from the dissident right. They will pull from the sort of sovereignty of monarchy, libertarianism, probably that sort of pseudo crap there, and Christianity. I'm sure they have some techno-primitives. I'm trying to think of the word. Those who think, who knows, weird ideas. But yeah, Christianity is just a vessel that a lot of them use. And a lot of the, like with Melanie Mack, I still think she's just a dumb born-again Christian. Okay, I think it's more John Del Rose and John F. Trent who are the real malicious actors. And Melanie Mack is a good face. A good distraction from the actual people writing these fucking articles in the beginning of all this shit. That's what I'm skeptical of.
Came to their conclusions because I thought that would work, or at least it could work in theory. And what I've come to realize just watching this after the fact is there's a Christian veneer to all this. Like they'll talk about the importance of like of thinking.
Okay, maybe he's right. A Christian veneer
of reading classics and things like that, of loving your neighbor, like there's all this other tangential stuff aside. And it was just weird realizing that these people were just possessed. Like it's not even that they came to this honestly. It's that when you present an argument for why this might be a thing that has problems to hold, this insistence upon race as sort of the wellspring of civilization or something like that.
Spit it out, man.
And they'll respond with absolute who challenges that. It was so strange. because these were people who you could speak to on friendly terms until. So that was odd.
Yeah, the friendly veneer of these people definitely seems they're all your friends, okay, until you question them. It seems to be the case with a lot of these people. Not that the left is much different. They have a bigger gatekeeping mechanism. The right is the sort of right ideas out there. Let's give it a little bit more.
What does Endeavor's audience think of this? So I checked their Discord, and it was weird. I expected Endeavor to have like his own Discord server, but no, it's NRX files and it has everybody. The entirety of right-wing Christian YouTube is basically there.
Wow.
Probably about 30,000 subscribers on YouTube in total, which isn't much in the global scale, but it's
and even calling them Christians is sort of weird framing, but I understand his ideas about this.
Yeah. And the reception was just pure hate. They started making my friend Shruggy went in just to check it out as well. This is an open Discord. You're not sneaking in to get in there. And they started making homophobic insinuations against him, things like that. And
yeah, they sort of as a gatekeeping test, sort of to weed out people. If you have a public Discord, I'm sure that's going to be how that happens. Also, you can nuke the Discord and start again anew. It's quite interesting how this information's been going through Discord for a while now.
Okay, so now I'm a little bit nervous about this. So I've been watching these guys for a long time, and after my spat with the distributors, they blocked me from everything. And I'm concerned because these guys represent my religion in a very sinister way, and I want to know what they're doing. So,
yeah, I don't think he's much of a Christian anymore, but this is baby President Sunday back in the day.
I had an account that was already logged in with them, and I just paid attention to the chat, and I heard this. And it's actually a really good thing I did, because about 30 minutes later, I heard Settlers Lament Closington, that's the one who was talking about harassing ContraPoints, and Charlemagne, just yucking about we're going to go raid President Sunday's server. Let's go do that. Let's take down their information.
Right.
It was so weird. It was like that Goblin Town sequence from The Hobbit. Yeah, that's what it felt like walking in there. Yeah.
President Sunday. Yeah, you had some potential back in the day. You're just weird now. Okay. You still have your moments, but it's really hard to actually say with this. So there's a lot of videos that just serve as sort of context. Like, I'm not going to put the President Sunday thing on. I'm just going to highlight it real quick. President Sunday 4 years ago.
President Sunday here. Today I'm going
This was before roughly around the shit around the lockdown that really gave a lot of these guys. A lot of the dissident left started before this, but the dissident right really took off with the lockdown. And I don't blame them. It's going to come up later. Okay, because I'm going to make a few pivots away from this. I'll have to explain my particular logic on that. But yeah, softest. So this, and he called his Discord the Cathedral. I checked the link. It links to nowhere. But he's definitely within this. But this is just to highlight his whole saga with President Sunday. Not going to put people in there. Here's an interesting part. The community that I sort of probably was a part of, or at least was starting to get into during this time. Good old Stitch and Adam. Let's see a little bit of this sort of idea out there.
Can I make a recommendation?
They have a nickname for academic agent when I didn't know who he was. Quackademic agent. And I think that's holding true farther along. And just look at what Sargon tries to do here. And just timestamp, this is 2 years ago. Because times are going to be relevant
for next week's stream.
Yeah, sure.
Academic Agent recently put out an hour-long No, listen.
Veto.
Like no, listen, you're going to like this, right? An hour-long video explaining that the slaves had better working conditions than the average person now.
Oh, God.
That's so evil.
I think you should do it. I think
yeah, that's funny.
How's that going to wait? I thought you wanted us to build bridges.
Yeah. You want me to destroy?
He has a weird sort of way on religion. I agree.
It sounds so dumb.
Well, see if you can.
Oh my God.
I'll send it to you.
That's terrible.
Okay.
Oh, that's terrible. You don't buy into that, Sargon, right?
So
Carl.
you've already
Carl.
listen.
Carl, tell me.
You
Carl.
have already
Oh no.
put a normative moral framework.
Look, he's using leftist language here. Normative, fucking Sargon, postmodern traditionalist. But listen to just a little bit of this.
Because I'm American, I believe in freedom.
No, I just think I'm just assuming offhand it's fucking stupid and wrong.
No, it's not, because the thing is, conditions have got worse
than being a slave.
Right. Yeah.
Then
no.
But you don't know what the conditions they lived in were like.
Well, I do know that the slave master could come and rape your wife, and you couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah,
I think that's a pretty strong condition.
And what percentage of black women said they've been raped?
Fucking
you gotta love this. You can't trust postmodernists with data. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Look at how Zargon goes about arguing this video.
Oh, it's what you're talking about.
No, it's not, though. That's the thing.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Oh
He's
my
actually
God.
got the statistics. But it's not really that. That's like one aspect, right?
Wait.
Yeah, you trust academic agent to have the statistics.
Wait. How could you have a statistic from like the 1700s or 1800s of black slaves talking about whether they were raped or
slavery
not?
in your country ended in, 1865?
And you think they were going to go up and be like, listen, I was raped as a, like, I don't know.
Yeah, the US government did do that. They did a big study of like the older slaves before that generation died out. So they had some information on it. In like 1910 or something like that.
So the last generation of, first of all,
the last generation of
the last generation of slaves where conditions were already changing and society was already changing.
The thing is, most like this, what you're doing here is highlighting something that doubtless did happen, but was not like the sum total of the slave experience, right? Not every black female.
Yeah, you went with the older slaves who actually probably lived decent, healthy lives, while those who were probably more abused and mistreated probably ended their lives earlier. So you're already weeding out the more likely candidates for a lot of fucking things out there. So again, lies, damn lies, and statistics. But academic agent has the statistics.
Slave was
Little
raped,
bit more, just for
and
fun.
also, many of them actually had more access to resources than a minimum wage worker does now. And in fact, there are slaves on record who said it got worse for them after slavery ended because then they didn't get anything. They just got paid $1 a day.
Yeah, but that's very different. It's very different saying, "Oh, I had more resources immediately following the abolition of slavery," versus trying to compare it to like today's world, right?
Well, things are worse now. Like the minimum wage worker has actually got a worse.
No, I think Sargon's one of these people who just got blown out. Like Mr. Medicare went in on his ass. He got sort of shown up on the kill stream where he completely got wrecked. Hell, even during the sort of skeptic days against harmful opinions, that was a complete travesty. He just had so many fucking L's. He went back, tried to do a political thing, couldn't hack it there. Understandable. He really memed his way too far through and came back to the internet with Lotus Eaters. And I think a lot of them are of this sort of distant right flavor. But there's also another connecting tissue that I want to get into.
This condition.
I don't
material.
believe
This is crazy.
I don't believe
Carl,
crazy.
Carl, I can't believe you're supposed to be pulling him back from the abyss.
Yeah, you can probably look up the debate between harmful opinions and Sargon on pretty much the candid stuff. I could summarize it real quick. Harmful opinion. Sargon's like, why are you trying to sow dissidence among us? We're making money. We get demonetized. Harmful is just autistically focused, and he's like, yeah, but the app is fucking using an algorithm that's going to be used to censor you other places. And shows, at least at that time, not a very principled stance among the skeptic community.
Not him pulling you into the canyon.
This is not an argument for slavery.
The Lake of Fire is down there.
We don't think it is an argument for slavery. We think
Then why
I'm assuming
are you
it's
acting like this?
Well, I'm assuming
This is
the
not-
underlying
This is an argument for how bad things are under neoliberalism.
Yeah, but you.
Bing bong, yeah, totally came back and have this sort of thing. There's other things out there that really have me concerned, and I don't know why I got off that. I want to highlight some of these videos, like Academic Agent. Can the progressive become the new anti-establishment? But I just clicking on it just to see the sort of date he puts on this. 1 month ago. So they're still sort of simping for this. Academic Agent is the Eber ex-Kendi of the right. Maybe that's not fair. Who knows? Okay, so I tried to order this the best I could, but I sort of failed. There's going to be some West Side Tyler, a little bit of, not Hoppler, Jesus. I don't have the wrong one. Some of President Sunday. This is the Academic Agent. I would side with President Sunday against Academic Agent. I feel dirty for saying that. Dave Smith, the Libertarians. He became a sort of mouthpiece for, like he was on Jimmy Dore a lot. I remember that. I'm like, okay, that's nice to see them coming across the aisle. But he brought Jimmy Dore too, stitching at him, and that they might clickbait the complete disaster with Jimmy Dore, Kurt Metzger, and comedian Dave Smith about Ukraine, where basically Jimmy Dore just dips out. So I don't know if I was around for this. I catch a lot of that stuff on post. Yeah, you can see leftists like West Side Tyler, who I have my eye on. A little bit of a West thing there. I don't know about that. I saw him had an interview with Beckett from Cope and Steve. Dave Smith, powerful mouthpiece. Said a lot of this won't be relevant. I tried to order it in the most relevant thing that I can. So I think this is the most relevant here. Reason TV, libertarian website that I can respect. Logical arguments here and there. Going to definitely come into play for a little bit here. So I have a certain timestamp here. It's not too far in. I'm going to start us off with journalism. Yeah, tough topic to tackle. Reason journalism.
Much about the place. So it's part of it, yeah, but also journalism is just a different thing. It's gathering of facts. I would point to, if we're going to be talking about Marie.
I skipped this whole section where he's talking about political power here and there. And I'm going to go to the comment section because utilizing that as a tool is a good thing.
Rothbard strategy as being something that is helpful. You should point.
So Dave Smith, dissident libertarian, which seems absurd, a populist libertarian. You're already competing with the populist right and populist left. What's the purpose of a populist libertarian just going along with the popular vote instead of what I see? Although I have my disagreements with libertarian taxation is theft. I think that's a little bit too far, and sort of a anarchist view. I think that really just throws out the baby with the bathwater. I think minimalist government is what I respect among them, because we live in a society, so we need to find ways to come together, and I shouldn't probably be going off on this.
Point out that it wasn't always helpful. Murray Rothbard went to some bad places in the early 1990s. That is what happens when you go towards the attainment of political power and also power, and also like this sort of attempt. And there's something elite about this attempt as well, or at least not elite. It's a temptation that intellectuals and people who work in the knowledge class always are tempted by, which is that if I can just harness this populist feeling out there, I'm going to produce my intellectual ideological outcome. You see this with Murray Rothbard and Lou Rockwell in the early 1990s with the Rothwell.
And I understand fucking the big parties, the rightoids and the leftoids, rightists, leftists, going along trying to take advantage of this. But the libertarians, it just seems like you're going to be the whipping boy for whoever's in power. And maybe some libertarians would be fine with just being the good libertarian at the side of whoever has power. But given the sort of distant right feeling about the elites, they would probably scheme to sort of do something. I don't even know at this point.
Rockwell Rothbard report. They were talking about Senator Joe McCarthy, Tail Gunner Joe, as being a role model. They were saying nice things about David Duke. They cozied up to Pat Buchanan at the time as a kind of predictive element of where a segment.
Yeah, David Duke. Pat Buchanan, I don't think is that bad. I mean, no one disputes these sort of points out there. There is no dispute. This is just funny as all hell. Like, let me get into the comments here. Neo Anime Dream. Such a great name to be taken seriously, dude. If you don't do something to attain power, you will always lose. This is without question. Now, that doesn't mean it's necessarily strategy to get your guy in. You need power in some shape and form. 2, Rothbard in the 90s was more realistic. He knew if libertarianism was going to have a chance, he would need the help of paleo-cons. Basically, Nick Fuentes type crowd. And they've evolved since the 90s, and they've become even more. Had he seceded, it would have watered down libertarianism, perhaps, but you would rather get a 60-70 1-0. Would rather keep my personal pride. Some pragmatism is needed, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, your number one statement, if you don't. Yeah, but you don't necessarily need power. In this translation, libertarians mustn't get too adjacent to populists, lest we get called racist by our liberal betters. I thought libertarians were the liberals, the extreme liberals, extreme freedoms. Got it, Matt. Don't think people hate the state's going to lead to great outcomes. This is right here why libertarians stop listening to Reason, taking Reason magazine serious. Yeah, use the sort of pathos argument instead of a more logical one. It's called Reason TV. Wouldn't they go with logos, logic over pathos arguments that the sort of using the hate? And this was 11 months ago. 11 months.
The population was going to go as a sort of John the Baptist figures for Donald Trump. They were onto something, absolutely, and they were onto something much more than I certainly expected. So hats off for sort of like describing a world as it exists rather than the world than I thought it was, but as a place where a person can go and hold on to one's libertarianism or one's ideology. It was corrupting. Those types of things are corrupting. It's going to lead you to positions like Lou Rockwell had of like defending the cops against Rodney King, of writing just really horrible things like the early 90s.
That sounds pretty bad. If I remember Rodney King, that sounds like an unjustified sort of beat in there, but maybe I'm not educated enough on that.
1990s stuff that came,
then?
Whether it's in the Ron Paul newsletters or the Rothbard Rockwell report and all these kind of things. It's very noxious. It's very anti-libertarian. It went to a bad place. And you could say that admiring Rothbard for plenty of other things that he contributed in his life. But he was always kind of a political schemer. One way to look at this and take Rothbard and take libertarian politics out of this for a second is look at the difference between what Chris Rufo does and what, for instance, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education does. They are always at loggerheads, even though they frequently have the same kind of opponents in the world. It's just a different approach.
Feed. Okay, they pretty much try to make sure people, if I'm correct on this, Chris Rufo
and
what
what
he does.
For instance, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Education does. They are always at loggerheads.
Okay, I'm thinking probably fire, but I think they serve a similar purpose: academic freedom on campus. Could be wrong.
Heads, even though they frequently have the same kind of opponents in the world. It's just a different approach. Fire uses they're sort of tethered to a set of principles which they apply, hopefully, and in my view, usually very consistently across time. Rufo is going towards power, political power, like Ron DeSantis in Florida, and trying to influence it. I think both approaches are valid, by the way, and I think absolutely Chris Rufo has.
I don't know about that. They're valid, but the outcomes will be different. And power is a corrupting force. Okay, you compromise. Eventually, you have compromised so far, your values will be a distorted sort of parody of what you originally set out in the sort of attempt to go for power.
Has influenced American policy and debate more than a lot of private actors have for a long time. But I think it is also corrupting. You're going to lead to bad laws, which I think some of that has happened in Florida. So it's libertarian I think libertarian is naturally populist.
Yeah. In the thing that I keep citing for DEI, a libertarian alternative, that was well before this DEI craze. More about getting rid of these DEI people corporate brought in to make sure that they didn't have racists in their behalfs. But at the end of the day, that caused more turmoil within more fractionists. Anti-racism just causes more racism. Ibermax Kendi, the solution to past racism is future racism. I'm probably misquoting him, but it's close enough to count and definitely seemed to be how he went. And I wonder if anyone takes him serious after he got all those grants at that one university and produced like not much at all.
In that sense, it is a position from which you critique the application of power, and you correctly identify that, especially those people who say that, oh, we're just over here like trying to solve problems, that is actually ideological, even as much or more ideologically or more influentially ideological than libertarianism is. And yeah, Javier Milei going afuera a bunch and ripping stuff off of the wall is awesome. I would love to see that, as I would love to see someone articulate in the way that he has in those videos that we've all seen talking about economics and just rapid fire insane, Nick Gillespie on crank kind of mode. That's all thrilling and exciting. But let's also remember the conditions that brought him were so horrible, and I hope we don't live to see them in this country.
And there's it's also targeted at from a libertarian perspective. It's grounded. We talked about this with Dave too. It's grounded in libertarian theory, and when he's saying afuera and ripping things off, he's talking about dismantling unnecessary government bureaucracies, which all of us in this conversation.
I know I criticize Mentos Wave, the fresh maker, for his libertarian right perspective, but that they're applying this within the realm of libertarianism, not outside of that sphere. So I think this holds a little bit more relevancy here.
Agree with, and like when I think about populism, I agree largely with what you're saying, Matt, that there's a sort of cynicism to libertarians embracing it because populism can almost be its own ideology. It's like it is the belief that there is just that elites themselves are kind of inherently bad. And I think for libertarians, it's like, well, no, it's more like people who are using their elite status to infringe on others' liberties are bad. Like in a free society, we would have academics and.
Yes, it's about well, I'm not a libertarian, so I can't speak from my individualist perspective. The elites, you got to point them out. You can't just put all the same elites in the same bag. There are good elites, as he's going to get it. Good elites, it depends on who you consider the elites and that sort of gatekeeping mechanism. But I'm an individualist. If an elite did something bad, yes, criticize them. If they just are part of a class and you want to oppose collective guilt on them just because they're part of a certain class that they might have been born into and have other issues with, because just because they're elite doesn't mean that they're like every other elite. And he's going to go into the details that I generally agree with.
And we would have, titans of industry and so like, so there would be kind of like natural elites. So we're not against that necessarily, but we're against.
I think they push back natural elites. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. This must be one of those ideas. I guess people who are just intelligent enough to rise up to the elite status, no matter if they were born into it or that. And there's some dunderheads who just dunder their way through their elite status. Someone like Fauci.
Natural elite, Zach Weissmuller.
well, we're against like the Klaus Schwabs of the world, who is himself defining himself against libertarian. He said, libertarians, these anti-system people, are the enemy. And so, I have no problem being kind of like creeped out by like the
Carl Schwab. This is the guy who does stakeholder capitalism. That is like a laundered. I don't know if it's Marxism or like critical theory, because that's another distinction. Neo-Marxism reflects more the ideas of critical theorist who was sort of critiquing Marx and sort of criticizing him along with liberalism and probably all the other ideologies of the day to sort of put their ideas forth. And that's what more neo-Marxism is descended from. Feminist theory, intersectional feminism theory, critical race theory, all that critical theory that comes from the idea of the critical theorist who thought Marx was onto a good idea, just like a lot of these people out there, but he just had the wrong ideas about it.
Dastardly plans of the World Economic Forum, even though I don't think that they're out there eating babies, but they want to. They have a vision. They have a kind of technocratic vision of the world. They have this idea that
yes, why the dissident left has an idea of this utopia, future things will solve all problems. We're gonna trans, not a problem. You can just in like 50 years, you'll be able to get a new body or something like that. It's sort of a utopian, futuristic society. Why those on the distant right, woke right, opposed to the woke left that they're going on, have a more traditionalist, which has about the same revisionism in it that the sort of left tends to do with like the 1619 Project.
We're gonna kind of meld public and private, and we're gonna have stakeholder capitalism. We're gonna kind of go the China model. That is something to be alarmed about and worried about, and to the degree that resisting.
Of course, it's all descendant from Marx. Mutation on his ideas, passed along different lines, different thoughts about it, different branches that meld. It's sort of like a virus. All these ideologies sort of morph. Even liberalism, I don't think people have adapted to how it should be applied to the modern day. People have a lot of strange ideas about how it was presented, and they tend to mischaracterize it. Not too concerned with that. Not a lot of people are thinking about how we can make methods to make the predominant status quo idea work better. Libertarians tend to try, and I think they're the closest ones, but they do lack certain things that I think make them better. What's the term I'm looking for? Idea men than actual people to put forward things out there in the world.
Thing that is quote unquote populism, fine, but this kind of unmoored populism and appealing to just like a vague sense of the elites are controlling everything. I think that is where we start to run into big problems.
Well, wouldn't libertarian?
Yeah, and they're losing control because information is free. So countries who don't want the sort of freedom idea put tons of restrictions on social media, and like China.
And populist counter to both of you, because I do want to sort of play devil's advocate for a second here. I think I agree with what you guys are saying, but wouldn't the libertarian populist, if one were in the room with us, counter Zach?
Okay, I like this. Some people probably think she's straw manning them, but it seems about correct from what I gauge. But I'm not getting too in the weeds to it.
They shut you inside your house in Los Angeles for, a really long time, to the point where you felt the need to move your entire family to Florida to ensure your kids didn't grow up masked.
Pay attention to all these arguments she makes. This is why it might be sort of straw manny, This is clearly pathos arguments.
Same for you in New York City. I mean, you
Emotional
have basically
arguments.
been betrayed by the state that has locked you inside your houses for many months on end and basically removed public schools as an option available to your children. What has the state done for you? They've
And
done
Liz, they blocked you from going to church, right?
Well, I mean, legitimately,
they blocked people from going to church. That is such a radicalizing notion. I mean, just
for a
cutting
long
off the
time,
community.
they did all of this.
Yeah, this is definitely something that's going to bite the government in the ass. The lockdown, the draconian methods the world and America went through definitely gave them the emotional argument. And I see it. I just don't like the emotional arguments out there. I think they play on people's deepest fears and issues out there. It's powerful stuff, but I would rather go with more logical things because that is the way we think through. Things get better. People emotionally, rationally not thinking about things and just going off of, oh yeah, I hate things. So let me just have this reactionary stance. Makes not much sense to me.
To us, and then they basically said, Matt and Liz, in order to possibly enter a New York City restaurant with your family, you have to show proof that you've gotten the vaccine a bunch of times at a certain point, right? Because you require multiple doses. And then by the way, Zach, those questions you had about the origins of this whole virus and whether or not there was a lab leak, well, actually, we're going to censor and suppress a whole bunch of information, journalistic information that attempts to get to the bottom of this, even though it's all.
And there could be things off with this here and there, but this, I think, is close to understanding the reality of the situation. I'm not denying any of this stuff.
Happened in China, where the CCP, sorry, I did my best Donald Trump-esque China, but like where the CCP, we know it's not generally transparent with us, right? Like, so when you tally up what they've done to us over the last 4 or so years, not to mention every single year they take hefty chunks of our paychecks, how could you not hate the state? Like at a certain point, you get radicalized.
It's not. Yeah, it's not about that. And let me just give one counter to that. And I'm curious to hear Matt weigh in on this. But when you talk about they locked me down in Los Angeles, it was basically one person named Barbara Ferrer, who was the public health authority for LA County, who.
Yes, put the blame on the people who actually did it, and maybe even blame the voters. But they're a nebulous sort of target. And who is the nebulous voters? I don't know. It's anonymous.
Who's like a master's of public health or something like that. And then who was it that ultimately declared that, locking people out of their churches was unconstitutional? It was a bunch of robed elites from Ivy League, from the Ivy League, sitting on the Supreme Court. So it's not as simple as like the elites versus the non-elites or on your side or not on your side. And that's, I guess, my point is like we should be looking.
I agree with that. And even if I think that the corrupting force of that elite status will lean to the more malicious elites taking more population, acknowledging that there are some of these elites who still fight for good things is something we need to keep in mind. That's why blame the individuals who actually pull through with these programs, because there's a lot of useful idiots who prop them up. They're idiots. You need to cut through the bullshit, cut through the raw pathos, feeling-based emotions, because that's how the leftists, the woke left, sort of weaseled their way in my personal opinion. And I don't let that affect me from as a counter to the woke left. So why would I deal with it from the woke right? The emotional arguments from those people and a couple of other things that I'm going to highlight, hopefully.
Looking more at what are the mechanisms for these infringements rather than like what kind of strata of society or culture is it coming from?
But I do think it is worth pointing out that like Barbara Ferrer and, big city mayors, whether Garcetti or de Blasio, were all taking their cues from Anthony Fauci and then the teachers unions and Randy Weingarten, who Matt has written about extensively, right? Like to some degree, there was a level of coordination, maybe not in the sort of sense that people envision of like, well, the deep state is conspiring against us. But there is certainly, the CDC says one thing and Anthony Fauci says one thing, and then all of these big city mayors take their cues from that and so on and so forth. Matt, what do you make of all this?
That is, I mean, I've always used the phrase political class in that in many cases.
Yeah, as I said, libertarians are horrible. Like this whole thing. This is what they're bouncing off of here.
Let's roll that best.
I'm a big believer in the Rothbardian kind of like populist idea that, and look, I think you see this with Javier Milei, right? Like this is the way it can be done. Like this is the way to do it, is to tap into this kind of populist streak, particularly at a time when the elites have so mismanaged everything, and kind of like talk to people about how they're being ripped off, how they're being ripped off, and these guys are doing it to you. And then the problem with populism always is that it's completely devoid of any type of theory. Trumpian movement in general, there's just no. It's always like he's railing against everything that is pretty horrible, and then it's like, so what's your thing? It's like good deals, make the best deals. Only I can. It's like there's nothing really there. But libertarians already have that. It's like libertarians have all the theory, but we're missing all of the like populism to make it like appeal to people. So
what do you?
That's all really the sort of stupid response, that sort of thing. I think it's relevant enough to bring up in particular here. So I don't know if I want to get off of freaking Dave Smith just now, because he has a lot of influence. He's on Joe Rogan a lot, putting this. And you gotta love the fact that he's putting out there as a comedian. So that is also something that I've noticed, the sort of comedy route. And you know what? God, I'm gonna have to jump off of this real quick. But yeah, a little bit of see a little bit of him on Joe Rogan.
The Messenger was so polarizing that people lost what's really going on just based on who this guy is, who has, like, just like Tony Hinchcliffe is an insult comic. Donald Trump's entire career is you're fired. Yep. You're a loser. Rosie O'Donnell's a loser. Like, that's his whole shtick. And you expect him to course correct once he gets into office? No, he's not. That's not who he is. You elected that guy. But along with that, now you get RFK Jr., you get Tulsi Gabbard, you get Elon Musk, and you get JD Vance. You get brilliant people who aren't ideologically captured, two of them who used to be Democrats, one of them that probably knows more about environmental polluting and about the problems with pharmaceutical drug companies and health and the consequences of all sorts of pesticides and herbicides and ingredients in your food that should be banned that aren't banned in other countries. You got that guy in there now. And we got a real chance to make real change. This is like one of the first times ever where there's a real chance to make real tangible change that's going to be for the good of everybody. Yeah, and he's got.
I don't know what happened.
That's the thing. Like demons never really get you. You know, they're scary. Like ghosts, they never steal you.
Yeah, it's true.
Neither do aliens. They bring you back. They always bring you back.
It's like
they borrow you for a little bit. They freak you out.
Do you think like demons are bummed about that? Like they're like, did you kill anyone today? And they're like, we can only really scratch people.
Tucker thinks aliens are demons.
Yeah, I know.
Aliens are angels and demons. He thinks it's like this idea that they come from outer space is stupid. He said he thinks they've been here all along. This is like legit scientists that entertain this.
Yeah, I'm not convinced of that, but I do think he's really, I think he's great on war and immigration.
He is. He's a brilliant guy.
But I do think another huge component of why Trump's got such an opportunity right now is because, like, you see it where, like I was saying, the protesters aren't there anymore. And there's a whole lot of really interesting reasons, I think, for why that is. But also, and I was getting in an argument on Twitter the other day with Michael Tracy, who I do like and respect very much.
Yeah, look how he doesn't really get into the meat of things. You're going to see it more when I get into the woke right conversation, which I don't know how deep he gets. Maybe he has an argument someplace, but I'm going to be pulling from something that had on James Lindsay, then had on Dave Smith afterwards to talk about the woke right. So let me just get into that now instead of highlighting that particular thing. So I'm going to come back to
which
another
led to this
thing.
conversation. You said the bottom line is that the term woke right makes perfect sense when applied to pro-Israel right-wingers. The parallels are obvious. The term makes no sense when applied to America.
So you look at this particular thing here. He's making the woke right just about this one fucking little issue here. This is a man who was on Jimmy Dore, who definitely, for anyone who's just joining or want a refresher, these people are using the populist movements, or at least the distributists, which probably applies to someone like Academic Agent. So I can't prove Dave Smith is sort of alignment, but he seems to have that same general vibe there.
America first, non-interventionists. It's embarrassing to see people twist themselves into pretzels defending this accusation. Let's debate this. It's an important topic, especially right now. James Lindsay won't.
Okay, yeah, this debate thing. I don't like this debate thing because of how it is utilized. It's seen as good versus evil. Okay, discussion, I think, is a more viable. I'm not going to shy away from debate. I just think they should be handled a little bit more logically when they typically are the sort
of defend his
argument.
Garbage analysis. So who will? James Lindsay won't defend his garbage analysis.
Yeah, I was muted because I am dealing with things around.
Analysis. So who will? Now, when I saw this, I was like, oh, damn, shots is fired. I think I gave James Lindsay his third strike for not taking the debate with you. I think that's what the third strike was. I was like, that.
Why? I agree. James Lindsay is not a debater. You can't expect everyone to debate. I'm willing to debate certain topics, but I need to know the sort of topics that are being debated. And I hope we don't play that anymore. Definitely going to go in. If the debate is a debate, I'll make that clear and not let pivots, distractions, and all sorts of things, because that seems to be obfuscation.
That's what makes a woke right. Do you want to respond to that? Look like he's about to say something.
Well, and from what I've seen, the woke right use comedy a lot as an obfuscation tactic. But that could just be my observation of that, or religion in some cases. Comedy, humor, which I'll sort of get into.
Well, I mean, I should just say things got kind of nasty in the back and forth between me and James. I don't really like hate the guy or anything like that.
He has to make this very clear. He doesn't hate the guy. No personal malice. It's all on James Lindsay's side. Oh God, James Lindsay has. I mean, I like his ideas, but I think the way he conveys it is retarded as all hell. Maybe this woke right stuff is working. He did his own sort of grievance studies against the more woke right thing, rewriting a more communist manifesto and getting one of these woke right journals that are popping up more recently to publish it. So that's interesting to know. The same thing he did for the woke left, he replicated for the woke right. I think that, and everyone went ballistic about that and wanted debates. Why not have discussions about it that flows, or have something? See, the manipulation of discourse is definitely something to be concerned about. But you don't need someone to be good faith to sometimes figure things out. That's what I firmly believe in. Sometimes you can tell more from the bad faith people throw against you. So let's see this.
He took offense to something I said when I was on Tucker Carlson last time. That wasn't about him at all, but he kind of took offense. And then I don't remember why he started.
He was mad, bro. Okay, that's why. What is that thing?
Started with me this last time, but I am very quick to kind of just give it back on Twitter. You know, it's
what
Twitter.
Did he say?
So if someone comes at you, you kind of come back at them. You know, I don't actually remember exactly.
What did he say? I don't actually remember. I think you're just making this shit all up. You're misremembering it, and it works to your advantage.
Exactly what? Okay, it was. But I will say that if I'm just being honest, yeah, I watched the first half hour of him on your show.
Okay,
and it's just his reasoning, I think, is all over the place and kind of sloppy and doesn't really make any sense. It's just I think the argument is very sloppy. He was sitting there when he starts discussing the woke right, he kind of starts getting into these vague characteristics that could describe any political movement. Like they're mean. They're not, they're not well behaved. Okay, I mean, I get called gay on Twitter all the time. What?
Pivot. Okay, a total sort of distraction. Oh, no wonder I wasn't paying attention when I walked this. Okay, but legitimately.
But it's how is this even relevant? What we all get that. That's what Twitter is. Every single group does that, and there's all these kind of.
This is called a whataboutism, especially when you can't remember what you said to get him so ass mad. Okay, try to find pick your battles, okay? That really does seem to be the way of both woke. Hyper focus on the sort of mistakes. Like when that one person who wrote a book on woke got asked on the show what woke means, and they stumbled there. Sometimes people aren't good at debating, and some people don't have media trainer, especially researchers. So keep that in mind.
I don't know, these things that I've heard him argue on other shows where it's like, well, they have a belief around identity. You're like, yeah, that describes every group of political actors. That's not what anyone thinks of when they think of woke. However, and this is what I've been saying for quite a while now, there's the group of, say, like the Ben Shapiro right-wingers, or whatever you want to call them.
Here we go. Okay.
Well, the parallels are just obvious. I mean, they spend their entire careers railing against these snowflakes on college campuses, and then as soon as the topic is Israel, it's the exact same tactics. All of what everybody, when normal people say the word woke, what they're thinking of is the exact same thing. They call you a bigot as soon as you make any point. Doesn't matter what you say. It's just, if it's not in there, if it's critical of Israel, you're a bigot. I mean, the examples are all over the place. Thomas Massey said that America's broke. We're $35 trillion in debt. We can't afford to pay for other countries' wars. And John Podhoretz called him anti-Semitic filth for saying that, for making an argument that we're broke. We can't pay for that. So like all over the place, you get the conversation gets shut down with accusations of bigotry if you ever bring anything up.
Yeah.
I think you know this personally.
I don't know nothing about this. I don't know what you're talking about.
I must be confusing you. I'm confusing you with somebody else. I'm sorry. My mistake. But so it's like there's that. Then they actually have it like, and in many instances have used the power of government, laws cracking down on speech in several different states because there's an unsafe environment.
So I think that unprompted sort of section there can give you an idea. Moving way past James Lindsay, you didn't even technically strawman him. He's just like, yeah. I think James Lindsay was fairly clear in his sort of discussion there with Hoppler Jesus. But you know what? Populism doesn't need logic. And I still think James Lindsay, to focus on Christianity, which I think he did get rabbit hole into his conversation with Hoppler Jesus, was a rhetorical mistake overall. So Dave Smith, woke right, I don't know, but he definitely runs cover for them. Is he a useful idiot that they just take advantage of, or is there more to it? I'm not sure at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, it's always hard to tell with these particular things here. So now we've run so far off of the sort of original idea. Let's move it back. Let's go to one of these centrists who I definitely don't want to get confused with, because frankly, this guy hurts my head and he's a little bit too chummy. I can't get along with centrists who are fucking so friendly with someone like Bosch in general. I mean, I like the ideas behind this. He has a whole section here. Let's start with this, because I'll have a few things to say. Let me make sure I'm sharing the right thing. Yep, good old P.F. Chung, memeology, which I think has a certain validity to it. But overall, I think this video is rather flawed. But it does highlight a certain thing I want to bring up.
While many members and beliefs of the dissident right are self-evidently repulsive, it's vitally important to recognize and acknowledge the key.
See, he starts off, I think a lot of this stuff, he explains it, his meme curve, which I think is incredibly flawed. He has to use emotional language. This is just weird. America is an ethnic group, not a set of ideas.
Proves that they've built their movement around. One of the fundamental ideas that the dissident right puts forward is that individuals derive meaning from being part of a collective, and that collective must be tied to a particular people group or ethnicity rather than an abstract set of ideas. Sam Hyde, a very mimetically significant figure within the dissident right.
See, Sam Hyde, someone known for being a comedian, a very mimetic. They're using comedy to sort of launder some of these ideas. Why I'm not as hard on Sam Hyde, because frankly, his comedy is decent half the time. Better than most, sometimes I do question it. I think that's where he really pushes some of these ideas. But he's using comedy sort of get it through to people, which seems to be something that seems to be a trend within a lot of the dissident right people. Just like, let me just call them woke right. They bring in their ideas through other means, culture war means, and try to push it and make it relevant to more real world possibilities in the long run.
Made this point, among others, in his viral address to Elon Musk.
There's this disturbing idea from the BoomerCon right that America is just a collection of ideas. You want these people on your side. They're ready to be on your side, but you have to fight not for Ben Shapiro's idea of the country of America, the notion of America as this collection of ideas. That's not what it is. It's Americans. That's who you have to fight for. If you're in America, doing business in America, you want to be the man in America.
Yeah, it's about individuals. But P.F. Chung, has his own little ideas. Okay, the ideas that people hold. How it's still the collective sort of idea out there, and laundering this ideas and getting it into the sort of public eye via something like comedy. I mean, I'm a little bit critical of it. I'm not saying it's necessarily a good or bad thing, but
you have to fight for the American people. You're not fighting for a paragraph. You're not fighting for a set of ideas, man. It's the American people who need your help. That's fundamentally why I think people are pissed off here.
This idea is at direct odds.
Yes, but you're being reductive. You're lumping Americans together at the end of the day.
Odds with the alternative belief that most Americans have, including myself to some degree, that American identity is based on ideas and abstract principles rather than an ethnicity.
Lurking underneath all of this is that deep.
You're pushing this forward. It's the ideas that definitely kept America as the freest country. And yeah, because people are getting lazy, not fighting for those ideas. They're sort of the woke left has weeded people away enough, like gun rights. Okay, no one likes school shootings, no matter whose side does it. Well, say most people don't like these mass shootings that predominantly happen with right wingers for a while. We're starting to get some left wingers in there now. They're not quite as efficient. Same with the bombing, the Unabomber versus the Tesla truck bombing. Maybe the woke left guy who did the Tesla truck thing wanted to make a statement and didn't want to actually hurt people because he's a soft liberal guy.
Deeper question of what is American identity, and I think it's been said recently, and I think it's provocative, and I think it's worth talking about that. America is not a creedal nation. That people will not die for a nation solely founded on abstract ideals. And I guess if that is your view, then that might inform your view of what immigration policy should look like. But my own view is actually, I do think that it's just a fact of history that the people who fought the American Revolution did fight for a nation founded on a set of ideals.
I believe that one of the most...
the ideals to be free and to run your own country and to try the great Milton Pot experiment. That's had its kinks. We had slavery. We tried to fight against that. We had to fight over that. We had to fight over civil rights, something that I don't think I made clear. The dissident right is totally against. The left wants to embrace it too much, to such a point where there's a fucking they will not replace us sentiment that I can understand it, but it's a really weird thing there.
Important political projects over the next few decades is being able to provide an answer to the question, what does it mean to be an American? Or what constitutes the American ethnicity?
He's still going with the sort of tribal, the sort of collective nature. He's not a centrist if he does. Sorry, what I wouldn't consider if he's not an individualist who treats things and ideas as personal thing, private property. No one gets the right to say what America is. We have to fight and negotiate it between each other at the end of the day. That's what is a self-regulatory system that makes laws rather hard to pass, which isn't working out great for us in the technology age, but it stops bad ideas from being implemented so quickly. It's a double-edged blade, the sort of slow system. And there's some ideas out there that is horrible, that's been kept, that should be gotten rid of. How much regulation on the books and laws don't get out. Definitely something that should be reconsidered, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Not saying the dissident right are the dissident right.
I guess that's all I really wanted to go over in this. He's like, James Lindsay strawmans them. Misguided liberal atheist. Look, he even puts his fucking frame in liberal atheist. Again, just another mouthpiece masquerading as a centrist with his fucking memeology crap.
Good at building their movement on this archetype. I do think American ethnicity is unique in that it's not directly based on race or a particular genetic lineage. But to simply say it's a set of propositions or ideals might make sense to people who define themselves by what ideas they hold. But for the vast majority of people, I think they define themselves by who they are in relation to their community. And I do think that is a much more tribal, collective, and ethnic view, although not.
No. Some people do that. Smart people build strong communities because we're just little guys, okay? We gotta sort of band together to get anything done. This is why individualists have a hard time. Acknowledge that things are better in groups and put forward ideas in general. Okay, so let's get it back into a little bit of the Chud logic before I end up with something that ended up on the thumbnail that I thought I would close with.
I don't know how you're defining.
So do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, he's going to introduce himself. I'm going to put a little bit of context to this. This is over the Whovians' woes. I think there's many different good things within this that I want to put on subtitles for.
So people know who you are and where they can find you.
Yeah, so my name is Liam Porter. I'm a YouTuber. I make documentaries about the alt-right.
In case anything is being obscured, let me put that out just for now. Documentary on the alt-right. Whovians' woes. So this is about millennial woes. And I think there's many different things out here. And I'm probably going to fill in some of the issues here.
And Gamergate and these sort of subcultures online of alt-right persuasion. The first one I made was about Sam Hyde and his feud, so-called feud with Tim Heidecker. The second one was about a guy called Michael who got involved with the Gamergate movement. And this latest one, as you've seen, is Whovian woes, about a figure known as millennial woes of the alt-right in Britain.
Like, I wouldn't have even made the Sam Hyde connection previously before P.F. Chang with the Dissident Right, the sort of use of comedy. And you'll see this within other people who aren't necessarily this woke right. They'll use comedy as a shield to, yeah, it's just jokes. And they'll use whataboutisms, like try to find where the other person is just as bad as them. Two things can be bad at the same time at the end of the day. But yeah, I encountered this video on Gamergate. It isn't great for Gamergate content overall, his documentary, because it focuses on one particular person. But I don't even know where to start. Don't want to spend the whole
his own Whovianism, because anyone who's a fan of Doctor Who knows it's a very liberal-minded show.
Okay, yeah.
Some similarity in background somewhere, right? And it just felt like this.
Gotta rewind, because I think this is relevant to what I want to say.
And I think at that point in my life, I was younger. I was more financially insecure, personally insecure. I was fringe myself.
Because, I mean, I don't know how intentional it was, but I certainly came away with this. But when I first started watching it, I guess because I can connect somewhat with millennial woes experience, as we've got like some similarity in background somewhere, right? And it just felt like this could have been me, because I was interested in this stuff as well. And I obviously I've wanted to be a content creator really for probably a couple of years now.
You probably shouldn't admit that. Okay. I think this conversation with Chud is really good for what it is. When Chud is off, it's just off. Okay. He definitely has some off points here and there. Generally probably prompted by some of his audience and some of this other peer pressure group within his little circle. But when he's on, and I like it. suffer when he has his cringe leftist sort of bias out there. I mean, there's some legitimate to it, but he plays it too hard when he actually goes into it.
And there's like a universe where I could have been like an alt-right YouTuber, or I could have been like a skeptic YouTuber that went alt-right or something like that, you know? So I don't know how intentional that was, but to me, it seemed like there was some element there of like, it felt like you were putting in there, and it felt like it's something someone could connect with if they've got the right experience to do so. Like, it felt like it's like, in my mind, this could potentially be anyone with a similar background. Like no one.
Yeah, it's like yeah, I feel bad about bringing up Jordan Peterson since it's sort of his issues with health and his turn, which I'm disappointed about how he's going about. Maybe he'll come back from it. Not having great hope. I still think he's overall more positive than bad, but that's my opinion there. But at the end of the day, people thinking that if they weren't in, that they would be against the Nazis if they grew up in Germany at that time. And he points out, no, a lot of you would be so weak-willed, you would go with what is verifiably really horrible stuff, the kind of stuff that alt-right, dissident right, and the woke right sort of disagree with. John Della Rose recently had a tweet saying well, maybe it wasn't him, like a lot of cringe stuff. Use comedy. That's someone who both combines the sort of Christian sort of thesos with the shield of comedy to get away with doing a lot of dipshit, a lot of emotional arguments. And he's probably a hypocrite, especially since he's like all on board with the sort of cancelization of Neil Gaiman. I haven't looked too much into it, but a libertarian guy who's on the Hill, Robbie, pointed out definitely one of the accounts who said that it wasn't consensual what she did with Neil Gaiman, has a text saying that, yeah, it was consensual. It was consensual. Not dependent. Neil Gaiman definitely seems like he has a freaky, wild sort of sexual preference there, and a little bit of the power dynamics I can see coming into play. But John Della Rose, because of his own experience, is all on to that cancel campaign and just milking that shit up.
No one's immune to this route potentially. I mean, I don't know if that was an intentional thing, but
yeah. I think it's interesting how BreadTube came out of the alt-right in the sense that people empowered themselves to be a public speaker on politics, and one was a reaction to the other. I find.
Yeah, I'm finding this quite interesting. I guess H Bomber guy and Mr. Medicare used to be in the same sort of areas. Same thing with a lot of bread tubers. They came out of the sort of edgy movement, got their start. Lindsay Ellis, part of that wasn't really edgy. That was like cringe edge, maybe at best. The guy with glasses crap. There's some legitimates to this.
Find interesting because perhaps people just go where the audience is, where the audience that finds them, they pull them in that direction. Perhaps Colin Robertson was made into millennial woes by his audience.
Actually, that's another interesting point, because you seem to put quite heavy at the start in that he was like talking about Doctor Who, right? And then you just.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point that one of the reasons I wanted to go over this last minute decision, and it's going to eat up a lot of time probably, but at the end of the day, yeah, they're using comedy such as Sam Hyde or the sort of radicalization thanks to media to sort of get people to turn. Very relevant to the sort of video game discussion I'm in or have been sort of engaging in recently. I mean, I don't care if they want to put forward their views about this, but the sort of a twisting of things, the generalization of all lefties. Yeah, there's a lot of bad ideas in the leftist sphere. Chud, obviously these people exist in a somewhat of a echo chamber because they don't realize not all lefties are like this. The debate scene, which counterpoints from the very beginning of this, engaged in. He was one of the few rightoids who really engaged with the progressives in their sort of panel scene. And I sort of respect him for it. He might have cucked out to Brianna Wu recently, but Someone says he's trying to reform her or something. I don't know the deal with that. But they definitely do. I almost got into a debate with Wick over CRT. I just didn't have the time and really the experience to do something like that. Plus, it's Wick, so even back then it was sort of cringe.
Notice this turn, and it's like there's a very jarring moment where he's talked about Doctor Who and how much he loves Doctor Who, and there's this moment, and it's almost like a kid finding an old toy that they're embarrassed about, and they find something on there that then links to the audience. Doctor Who, look at the Black Maid. Oh, disgusting! And it's quite a jarring moment, and I think it did really well to demonstrate that shift from almost like a childlike interest in discussing something they're passionate about to fuck this woke shit to feed into the audience. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a feeling if I was more emotional and less logical and really such a man-child where I can't just be like, I have early experiences of shows I like getting canceled, so I just said fuck it and went over to alternative anime, some books, got into things I did like. Books eventually became the sci-fi field. John Delarose sort of became a woke minefield that I have a few videos about personally, but that's a different issue altogether. I can leave these things behind and find something that resonates with me better. Dark Souls, been playing Armored Core 6. Still not through it. Probably get a little bit of that before I go to bed tonight after stream.
Yeah. So he is a Whovian. I think it's quite clear. But he denies he's a Whovian to this day. The reason he denies it is to be seen in the clip later in the film where he's talking about how they're all Guardian readers with their stupid frilly scarves and they just like these nice answers. They just cast of the Whovian liberal, his own Whovianism.
Yeah, definitely.
Because anyone who's a fan of his own liberalism and his own liberal-mindedness in earlier life, his own Whovianism, because anyone who's a fan of Doctor Who knows it's a very liberal-minded show.
Yeah, definitely. And because obviously, when he was younger, clearly he connected with that and connected with those narratives and connected with like the liberal aspect of it. And he said himself he's a liberal, right? But it's like his rejection of Doctor Who is a rejection of that politicized mind that he had as well as he moved further right, it seems.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I do think that he felt secure in that identity of being a liberal. He was going to art school. He was a Doctor Who fan. He loved classic TV and films and so on. There's some plane noise.
So that's okay. So, no, it's good. You're still coming through.
All good. Yep. So he had that identity, but when he went on the dole.
Yeah, just to let you know, this is not it might be on Chud Logic's stream, but this is on his channel. Liam Porter. And yeah, documentary, not willing to stray into the strays with the bullets there, but end of the day, I can respect his discussion with Chud Logic, even if some of his videos, I don't know. I can appreciate the sort of effort he took on representing both sides fairly well.
And that turned into a 10-year ordeal. He couldn't really cling to that identity anymore. So he was in a position in life where he needed a new identity. And this alt-right movement came along just at that point in his life.
Yeah, definitely. So one thing I noted is that I couldn't really get a read on, which to me is a sign of a fairly reasonable, as unbiased as possible documentary. I couldn't get a read on like what your perspective was on things that happened to him. So I'd be interested to ask you here, what are your thoughts on the most kind of, I guess, fundamental part of his growth initially when he was doxxed by the newspapers?
Welcome
what do you think?
to Chud Nation.
About that?
What do I think? I think that emboldened him at a point where he could have turned back to his normal life and just forsaken the channel. Or he could have done what he did, which is to become emboldened in the Millennial Woes persona and go touring with it, make a career of it, all these things he did, make his social network consist of alt-right people, which is what happened. So I think that was the point of no.
So when he embraced identity politics, not but identity politics, the collective nature of the alt-right, he sort of got more radicalized. And it was a well-meaning liberal who just thought his ideas were just so bad that I'm not saying the left is good, okay? They probably radicalized more people. And the lockdown probably added to that even fucking more. But you can say what the left did, what the country did, the world did during the lockdowns are all bad, and still say what these people with their sort of counter narrative, which seems mostly which seems to be mostly based on pathos, emotional arguments from what I've seen, and not much on logic. As I said, I'm someone who leans heavily into the sort of logical angle. Yeah, I have my little comedy bits, which I find funny, but I'm always willing to clarify that, yeah, this is comedy. And even if I do tell a joke, if it's misinterpreted, I will clear it up to be crystal clear what I meant with that joke. And some jokes work better than others.
No return. That's my read.
Yeah, because some jokes are really difficult to explain. But there's some logic behind it most of the time, for me even.
In that situation. What do I think about the journalists who wrote the headlines? I think they write in that way about all objectionable people. From the public's point of view, they use the word vile. It's a sort of style guide thing, I imagine. I think Colin took it much more personally than the journalist writing it.
So, sure, I guess for the journalist, they're just writing an article. Like, they probably don't have like a super high amount of political investment. They're probably just writing an article to fill up a place that needs to be filled. And this is like a kind of somewhat interesting story to do.
There's some minimalistic crap from Chud here that I don't disagree. Like public good, blah, blah, blah. So he said, watch it yourself if you want to see this rather good convo, a little cucked with Chud logic in this whole section.
So I can relate. And so the pure recognition, it didn't matter who it came from, really. So if it came from someone like Mike Pinovich of the Daily Shower podcast, alt-right podcast, and they invited him on, then, well, great. He'd go on it and he'd be happy for the recognition because they were telling him, yes, you're right. Papers are wrong. You're right. We're right. And we're part of a movement that's going to change the world.
Yeah. And another thing to note as well is like there was a clip from a Count Dankula video. And one thing I noted, I think maybe we were trying to get across, it felt like what was happening based on what I've seen here is some of these alt-right figures or center-right people, through their pursuit and passion of free speech, were giving cover to like some of the extremities of this person's views.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah, that definitely does happen. That's happening a lot. Excuses.
By Jewish people, I think was the thing she did. So she herself has said some things which are very questionable, like there was that Dave Rubin appearance where she talked about how the Canadian Nazi Party.
Because I skipped a bit there talking about Lauren Southern, who's made a recognition and maybe had kinky sex with Destiny. But that's just a really well-supported rumor at this point.
It was allegedly set up by Jewish people, I think was the thing she did. And she used to play this game. I think she doesn't play it as much anymore, but still got some pernicious views. But it would be like saying something that's kind of edging towards the Nazi takes and then pulling it back a bit, and just dancing across that line as and when required.
Very important for the part of the film dealing with the white Sharia meme, because you have to ask, why were they so angry with her specifically when she was not part of the alt-right? She wouldn't have the ATM of alt-right morality. Then he was taking a courageous moral stand. Because it did result in blowback for him.
One of the original red pillars came up, which is going to be relevant, which I'm going to bounce off or my bouncing out.
Getting called a mangina and so on, losing credibility. And it did actually have repercussions years later, that he had many enemies within the movement who thought he took the wrong side during that whole white Sharia meme. Actually, yeah, they thought that he was in the wrong even 2 years later, and they were happy to see his downfall.
Yeah, well...
Yeah, apparently from this, Millennial Woes was canceled by his own thing for defending women because misogyny goes rampant. Not quite sure what to make of that. I assume it seems about right, but I don't want to focus on that. Again, I'd recommend anyone interested in watching this combo.
If you know about the history of these kind of movements, it's actually very common that red pillars would blend together with alt-righters and stuff. Like Davis Arini's a great example of someone who bounced between the two, and it's very common because I think once you're on board with some of the red pill arguments, you're really primed for the stuff the alt-right then give you, and it's easy to kind of move.
Yeah, just like the dissident libertarians of all sort of flavors probably aren't really supportive. I think that's frankly what the Gooner Gates are. The Gooner Gators are more libertarian in perspective, somewhat non-political, but anarchists at the core, thinking everything's fine and not really having any solid principle except for money and maybe influence out there in the world. That seems to be their primary motive. They're not in it for the discussion, or probably knowing that they're not going to change a lot. But maybe some of them are self-deluded in a couple of different ways out there.
Move over in that direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Orini is a good example because he had a big part to play in Gamergate, making a quote-unquote documentary about Anita Sarkeesian. He was also in lots of alt-right circles, and he was a proponent of neo-reaction, which was a proto-alt-right philosophy.
That's interesting as well, because when I think of like the neo-reactionary movement now, that'll be like the NRX, I think they're called. I think of like Twitter intellectuals, you know, and people talking about like Moldbug and you know, stuff like that. And it's like, it's funny how that movement's developed.
Yeah, they sort of blurred the lines with all this dissident right stuff. This is why probably the woke right is a good term, because it incorporates a lot of different ideas. Okay, you have the more Christian sort of woke right people, and this is probably where James Lindsay's off the mark. He's not seeing the more libertarian. I guess they would be libertarian woke. I would lump them in with Defense Force for the woke right, who use woke tactics from both sides of the aisle, pick or choose. They care about results and power, and of course money. They're libertarians after all. That's their primary concern. And the more cucked ones cry when their efforts get sort of pushed back, or they milk them for content like fucking the Quartering did to Smash JT. Hilarious ass shit following this saga play out.
Developed from someone like Davis Arini, who I think someone like H Bomber Guy showed to be just a kind of lolcow, really, in some of his videos. And now you've got these kind of like very kind of self-important thinkers on Twitter speaking about this neo-reactionary stuff. I don't know if that's something you've noted.
Can I surprise you? Actually, Curtis Yarvin, aka Moldbug, was he's from way back. He was blogging in those days. He didn't appear on camera, but he was neo-reaction, really.
Yeah.
And people like Davis Arini latched onto him.
Wow. Oh, really? Wow. I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
The Dark Enlightenment, all sorts of ideas like that. So, as I said several times,
I think I found out about it. I think someone like H Bomber Guy showed to be just a kind of lolcow, really. Didn't think of
but
wow, oh really? I never really watched like lots of Dave, like a Sargonite kind of person, right? You know, so I only found out about it from H Bomber Guy because I was more of like a Sargonite kind of person, right? And I think I found out about it after the failure of like, you know, when Anita Sarkeesian documentary just went down the toilet, and I think a lot of the alt-right types of people disregarded him because they thought it was a joke. I think is if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, he also had like a.
Yep. He had the downfall and other infighting with his stupidity out there.
There was some big moment where all the alt-right figures decided that this was the time to lay into him, to kick him out of the movement. He always hung around afterwards, but his credibility went down a lot. Same kind of thing happened to Colin in a small form when he took the side.
Okay, so this is this guy's opinion, Liam's opinion. It seems to align with reality. In reality,
the women, which was an unpopular argument. That was the Bolshevik argument, the minority. And then later, of course, with the sexual abuse scandal, his reputation took a big dip.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's probably quite an interesting way to get to the next part. And it's the kind of contrast, right? Because he went from defending women. And the final note I'll make on that is it's funny how it seems that in the video.
Changed so much, obviously, going to focusing on this. Yep, I think that the Sargonaut aspect is a great place to bounce to the next fucking point. I'm probably wrong. Oh, yeah, I had another video queued up with this particular thing. Yeah, a little bit of one of Liam Porter's actual documentary. Let's pop this on and there's a place that I really want to highlight about Sargon before I move on to my closing act or closing example, which is quite interesting in my opinion. Right thing, wrong idea.
Because, I mean, is there anyone in this room who thinks multi-vegetarianism is a good idea? I'll talk to you about it in a second.
I kind of got into you about 2 years ago with Gamergate, and I kind of going in and out of different right-wing circles since then, and I recently came across your interview with Jared Taylor on your second channel, and I thought that was actually a really good opportunity for some future conversation.
Yours come first. This to me is an almost perfect parallel of the natural, instinctive, and healthy preference for one's people in a biological sense, unhampered by the embrace of people unlike ourselves. That to me is a splendid vision of humanity for all of us.
See, now the problem I have is I agree with you that each person considers their own child most special, but that's not something that we can ever action into law. So why should we do that in a racial way for our countries?
Well, imagine this. Imagine that your preference for your own children was trumpeted from the rooftops as a despicable form of familism, like racism. And the fact that you sacrificed for these...
See, even in that, very charismatic guy, obviously well-spoken. At the end of the day, what did he pivot to? A comparison with something that Sargon's obvious audience probably really hates, and they probably have good reason to, or bad reasons. The reason doesn't matter. If you hate feminism, you might be partially pursued by that. Again, I don't know how you'll feel about Liam Porter, but that's subjective, and this actually is pretty boring because it's about Random Can. This guy here who in
the form of a lovely young lady who went to one of his comments.
Dr. Random Cam, rape is never funny. I never found his channel really appealing. I tried it. Wasn't for me. End of the day, that's how that goes. And Indianat, we're going back to where I found the thumbnail and yeah, let's cap it off with this. This is Coach Red Pill. You can never trust the establishment right. And why this was a re-upload of Coach Red Pill, I have no clue. It's definitely older than that. So we'll end up with that. And I don't know if this is the person who re-uploaded it or if this was included. I recorded and edited this video before the recent fight broke out between the establishment and the Dissident Right. I was going to post it later next week, but I figured it might add something to the conversation. Probably not.
A little bit more, and more importantly, you get your first paycheck, and then you stop being leftist. Oh, yeah. As you get your first and then your second and third paycheck, and you see how much taxes takes a bite.
What about for people who were never fucking leftists? Because leftist is not a liberal. A lot of people like to confuse that as two, but they're not the same. Put all the propaganda you want out about it. There's misguided liberals who definitely kowtow to leftists because of emotional arguments. And why I don't give a damn about Muslim. I'm even stopped caring about fucking intent. Because at the end of the day, it's the results. And you can't mitigate the sort of factoring in someone did, like Liam Porter did with millennial woes. Understanding why people have their perspective. It's great context for it. But at the end of the day, if they deny, and just keep going along the direction that they want within that, it's not accepting reality. And you got caught up in something that, because you're financially or emotionally invested in it, you're not willing to accept the reality of that.
Fight out of what you've worked so hard to get, then yeah, fuck yeah, you stop being a left-winger and start being conservative. You don't want to be paying so many taxes, and so you want your taxes to be cut. And cutting taxes means that there's going to be less services for the poor. You start saying to yourself, well, why are these poor people, why are they getting all these services? Why don't they get up off their asses and start working? And soon enough, you start talking like a Republican, for crying out loud. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but here comes the key issue, because as you get more conservative and you start to realize that a lot of leftist shit that you'd been brought up to believe was sensible is just so much nonsense, right? As you become more conservative, there is a temptation to slide into being an establishment conservative. And you should avoid this trap at all costs.
It's a trap. And this is the sort of a thing that cropped up. So where did it lead, Coach Red Pill? Well, we don't know. Last we know is about this shit right here. And
You're saying free speech. Bro, they're at war. I don't even know if we have freedom of speech in America.
For all intents and purposes, what you call an ethnic nationalist. But he's not an imperialist, the Kiev regime. I'm telling you right now. These people are neo-fascist, neo-Nazis. The West is the one puppeteering Zelensky, right? The Kiev regime also constantly shelling the regions of the Donbass.
This guy was he in Ukraine? Why spouting this Russian sort of talking points? This is just insane that he thought he could, delusional enough to think that Ukraine, maybe he thought he was too small to actually be cared about. But yeah,
16,000 people died after 2015 up until the start of this conflict. 1,000 children or 800 children were killed.
A few moments later.
So yeah, it's muted here. On both versions of that I saw, it's just got muted.
How's he living like this?
Yep.
I know it's all memes and fun, but it's kind of yikes they arrest him. No, is it? Is it kind of yikes if you were in a country that's at war with another country, doing propaganda for the country you're at war with? I don't know if that's yikes. I'm not sure. My expectation would be I'm getting executed.
Yeah, it's weird. Definitely weird. And to balance it out, let's get a little bit of V. Someone I definitely runs cover for woke right people nowadays. Like, I don't even, yeah, I think Grums is woke right. I think he's more from the sort of libertarian perspective.
Coach Red Pill managed to get a significant following on YouTube by doing a tactic which many other content creators have employed, including Vosh and many others, which is of being antagonistic towards larger content creators, usually making accusations or saying certain things and asking them for a debate. This is in the hopes that the larger content creator would have to debunk the accusations or give you attention, and the entire thing would generate buzz and more views to your channel. That is how he managed to grow to a certain...
This is probably not a good telling of this particular event here, but I'll let it play for some. This is definitely a more right-leaning perspective who's currently engaging in the culture war, even though I don't know what he has to fucking say. A lot of these motherfuckers, I don't know why they're jumping into video games to push their politics. It was cringe and annoying when the leftists did it, the woke left. Why the fuck should I accept it when the woke right or the rightoids are fucking doing it? Again, woke right, I think the focus just on the right is a little bit flawed, because there's definitely a very libertarian streak that's sort of adopted into it, that definitely Mentos Wave, the fresh maker of content, has latched onto. And then there's the more Christian oriented people, which I'll highlight as an end. But let's listen to V
level, after which this tactic wasn't as effective. And as YouTube was cracking down on far-right content and the type of politics which he was expressing, eventually he had to reorient his channel and talk about something else.
You've been socialized into being the nice guy, right? You've been socialized into trying to please the girl, please her whims.
So he started talking about dating, and that's why the name Coach Red Pill is a thing. And his videos on dating were quite popular, some of them reaching 300,000 views. But they were also eventually cracked down by the platform because some of his thumbnails suggesting that women are like dogs and other things like that didn't really sit well with the YouTube moderators. So I think it was around 2020 that he decides to move from the United States towards Ukraine. And he also made a video suggesting that life in Ukraine is much better, and that he encouraged people from America to move over there because it's a lot more safe in Ukraine due to the fact that in the United States you had all the riots, you had all of the cultural conflicts that we all know and love. And a few weeks later, the war in Ukraine happens. Now, him being in Ukraine, he decided to do war footage. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, many journalists do try to report from dangerous places. I mean, it is a job, I suppose. He wasn't a journalist, but, you know, citizen journalism does exist. The only problem is that he was reporting the particular war footage from, how should I put this in a way that a Russian sympathetic point of view, right? So while in Ukraine, he was reporting this from a Russian sympathetic.
Yeah, that seems incredibly stupid and delusional to fucking do. So ending up with that particular thing with a highlight of the sort of more culturally Christian, postmodern traditionalist, as Sargon has, last time I checked, on his bio. I don't really, he probably has a blend of the both. But let's take a quick look at Goonergate at this end of this day to sort of highlight the sort of things. Gonna start with Melanie Mack, since she seems to be the particular focus. I don't fucking know why, because she's an old Ubisoft girl who got married, had a divorce, rumored that the husband left her for a guy. Can't confirm, but I saw it somewhere, and it's funny enough to bring up. If true, that definitely would be interesting. So she leaned into Christianity. Born again Christians aren't the brightest tool in the sheds, and even in my previous sort of commentary on Melanie Mack, I just think she's dumb. Born again Christian girl. But here's a clip from when I started my commentary channel 3 years ago. Yes, I'm not either stream, not woke, not gooner, that blah, blah, blah. Smash JT edit 30-minute video down to 60 seconds was ridiculous. It makes me question his integrity, as it should. I didn't watch his video. This is what he does with a lot of people. You're just seeing it because he's on against you now. His methods is extremely dishonest. Didn't watch his video. From what little I've seen, he's been in bad faith and been gripped in big time on it. Hoping the money is worth it. Rather keep in my integrity. Then you have Frittata, that stick boy, bringing up back with her Ubisoft shilling days, I guess, at E3. Actually, this might have been post Showgirl era, because she did do a lot of E3 stuff. Showgirl probably isn't even the term. Stop it, you're preaching at people. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's go to this, because I guess she blocked Smash JT. It is the same thing every time. Admits to not watching me. He doesn't watch a McDizzle's video on him and forms an opinion against me. He did that against a lot of people, including McDizzle, who did a rather decent thing, a little bit cucked here and there. What even is this? Make an actual argument, show proof, bring receipts, back your reasoning. Throwing Bibles at people don't work. Weakest. Yeah. You don't do much of that. Okay. She watched it. I don't know what this is a take of. What did you miss? A lot of crap. Okay. We had the fucking quartering. The dude's been crying about Melanie Mack all night. It's honestly real pathetic. Play titty games all you want, but stop moralizing, acting like you're defending the honor of her scorn fans. It's pathetic. Just to echo Wrong Hill. So this fight in this is quite interesting at the end of the day. Let's see. I know the quartering simp. A lame. Is that a fucking argument? Maybe you should take your own fucking advice, bro. This isn't an argument. This is just lame. Can I find fucking the quartering sort of retweet or did it delete or whatnot, where he's just farming Smash JT for engagement. Who knows? Not the brightest tool in the shed. But at the end of the day, it seems to be money-based. And at the end of the day, I think this is where James Lindsay on the woke right is missing his equation. He's not really making the distinction between those literally on the woke right, who typically does do the traditional conservative thing, sort of the post-liberalist thing that I have a video on Chewing Head's husband for, and the dissident libertarian factor that is definitely at play in here, who use humor and money and influence is more of their fucking concern at the end of the day. You're saying everyone with a tattoo cannot be Christian, so his fucking arguments are craptastic. Here's the one I wanted to look for. Although not mad, I'm farming you for X revenue. Why bowling? Another 350 series tonight. Pretty good night. Hope you can sleep knowing that Melanie Mack said one thing you didn't agree with. Smiley face. Come on, Coomer. Shine brightly. No one's stopping you. And look at this. 350 is pretty good. Like, how is that an argument to counter him? He can't deny this. This is within fucking Smash JTs and likes. This is just a shit show, drama fest to get attention. These are two distinct. I can't say they're too distinct. There's probably a sort of melding of ideas. People more in the fence and people outside of these sort of woke right or dissident ideas of the right perspective, because technically libertarians are the considered right. So I guess it would be fine to consider them the woke right at the end of the day. But yeah, that's all I got. And I hope this hasn't been a complete and utter confusing mess, because I did the chain of logic and now maybe I can get back to seeing the leftists or formerly left people like Chud Logic, why they're coming into commentary and why other people such as Beckett, I don't think everyone's going to make the jump, but Queeman's definitely an interesting figure in commentary. Not that the overlap of commentary really had anything. I have a video on Nicholas Diorio, and I took some clips of him talking to Bunk. He definitely talked to Bunk back in the day. Bunk has a lot of problems. I haven't looked into him, but it's not saying that the right, because Augie RC, who took a break for a while, everyone praise his return. He, at the end of the day, came from Ralph Retort. Same with the exiled Flamenco TV. I definitely represent the more right-leaning side of commentary with a couple of other people. Willie Mack probably falls in there. No hate on the perspective, as long as they keep their fucking little political takes out. It's definitely something to keep concerned about. Yeah, end of the day, just content on YouTube, putting your perspective out there and trying to be entertaining, educational, or whatever other goal that you do YouTube videos or streams for. With that said, I think I'm out and done. Peace out. Bye-bye.